Good day, and welcome virtually to the Canada School of Public Service. My name is Joanna Finikiu, and I will be your MC today. First, I would like to acknowledge that since I am in Ottawa, I am on the traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Nation. I recognize that we all work in different places, and that therefore you may work in a different traditional Indigenous territory. I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on that and acknowledge it. I am very pleased to introduce today's event, Driving Business Value Through Robotic Process Automation. This event has been months in the making. In fact, we were originally scheduled to have it back in April in the before times, and we are very pleased and thrilled to bring it to you today. On behalf of the school, I would like to welcome all participants to this event. Before we jump into some logistical information, I would like us to watch the following short video.
This is the story of work. It started a long time ago, on a Monday, which was handy. For as long as history itself, the humans needed to work. They wanted to work, to grow things and create things and build things, to see what they were capable of, to stand at day's end and say, I did that, which felt pretty good. So they worked more, built more, and created more, and traveled to far-off places. And then someone suggested submitting expense reports for those far-off places. His name was Glenn, and he was a jackass. Anyway, the people kept getting better at work. They built better tools to work more efficiently. They built amazing machines to work faster. They built computers to work smarter. But still, they couldn't do enough work. Because during all that work to do more work, they had created work, and not the good kind. Not the let's sit around and come up with ideas kind. Not the I can't wait to get to work so I can jump into a new project kind. The crap kind. The drudge and data and admin and the damned expense reports. So the humans had to work more at work they didn't like. That made them robotic. That didn't inspire. They had to postpone vacations. They had to miss family dinners. They were pissed. And then something happened. Someone had a really amazing idea. They came into work and said, stop working and start working. The humans thought she might have had wine at lunch, so she showed them a way to put the fun back into work, to waste less time doing the things they hated, to make more efficient the big tasks, to stop making the humans act like robots and start teaching the robots to learn the humans. Not to replace people, but to free them. Even Glenn. Robots that learn you. Imagine the potential, like starting over, to help us remember again that work only really works when we're happy at it.
Now, wasn't that fun? I keep sending this video to my boss and asking him to give me a robot that can take over my task. Maybe by the end of this event, I'll actually figure out how to make that happen. So today, we prepared a full and thrilling agenda for you. We are going to start off with an esteemed panel of experts, followed by 5 showcases that highlight the ways this technology is being applied today in the Government of Canada. The presentations will then be followed by a discussion with the showcase presenters. Before we get started, I would like to share some administrative details to support your experience during this event. To optimize your viewing experience, we recommend you disconnect from your VPN or use a personal device to watch the session when possible. De plus, il s'agit d'un événement en anglais.
And what's more, in English, of course, we do have a simultaneous interpretation, although this will take place in English.
We will start very shortly with an executive panel discussion, take a short break, and then transition into presentations that highlight the ways robotic process automations, or RPA, is currently being applied in the federal public service. You, as participants, will gain insights from departments and agencies that have experience with RPA concepts. You will also learn how to determine which processes are ideal for automation and how to collaborate to work towards enterprise-wide approach to implementing RPA. Before we jump into the first panel of the day, we want to get a sense of what you know about robotic process automation. To do this, we will ask you 3 questions using an application called WooClap. Trevor, if you could please share your screen, let's get started with the questions. This application is pretty easy to use. You can either manually enter the address on your device, or you can automate your process by taking a picture of the QR code displayed on your screen. The application will open automatically on your mobile device. If you want to enter the address, it is displayed currently on the screen as well. So let's get started with the first multiple choice question. Parmi les éléments suivants,
amongst the following elements, what is to the benefit of RPA? The robot can go get your coffee, free time, more personal free time. The robots will take on all assigned tasks or all of the above.
Really championing for bots resolving all assigned work items. But what do you think is the correct answer to the first question? Answers are starting to come in. The question again, which of the following is a benefit of RPA? If somebody can build us a bot to get coffee, I think that would be also very, very greatly appreciated. It seems that option 2, staff time will be freed up for more meaningful work. Le temps du personnel sera libéré pour un travail plus significatif.
Staff time will be freed up for more work.
Answer. We move on to the second question. Which of the following can RPA not do? Open email attachments, make calculations, resolve errors, or follow programmed if-then statements. And we see some answers starting to come in. There's a little bit more split in the answers for this question. Laquelle des actions suivantes l'ARP?
Which of the following actions can RPA not do?
Answer, resolve errors, is the correct answer. So that is a very interesting split of answers we have here. Maybe open for discussion later. Third and last question. Quel genre de tâche l'ARP est?
What type of task should the RPA do? Repetitive tasks for which there is high human risk, or all of the above?
These questions, this is great. And it looks like the fourth answer, all of the above, is in the lead, and it is the correct answer. And now we are going to move on to the first panel of the day. I would like to welcome the moderator for today's panel, Neil Bauer, Vice President, Innovation and Policy Services Branch at the Canada School of Public Service. Neil, à toi la parole.
Thanks, Joanna. That was a great little poll and a nice little just video that you showed there. I'm kind of new to RPA. I was trying to decide what it was like, and I remember the day when I discovered macros on WordPerfect or macros in Excel, and I thought, wow, this is great. Within an application, I can automate these tasks that I need to do, these calculations and so on. And I think the way I think about RPA is actually they're macros for all your applications. So you can do them and go into your email or into your HR systems or into the dreaded travel system that I shall not name, or into other systems and actually do those repetitive tasks for you. And they've gotten smarter. So they're like smarter macros that can access more applications. And I guess some people call them artificial intelligence. And in fact, you can find RPA providers on the AI source list that PSPC has put out to make procurement faster and easier. And I think it is said that for artificial intelligence, the first jobs or tasks to be automated are those that are dirty, dull, and dangerous. So I think this falls into the dull category. So if you've got a dull task or set of tasks to do, that's the way to think about it. I don't like to call it artificial intelligence, though, because for me, robotic process automation is actually automated stupidity, not artificial intelligence. So anyway, that's how I like to think about it. I think in the government we have lots of promise for processes that we follow and applications that we access and sort of routines that we establish that hold a lot of promise. And the private sector has seen a lot of benefits from robotic process automation. And now we're starting to see these kinds of applications in government. So it's great to see pioneers and leaders coming into the space, doing some innovations, trying them out, and then trying to create business value and to see whether or not these RPA applications can pay for themselves in greater efficiency and free people up to do the thinking work and the more creative work and deal with the exceptions rather than the rules. So to help us with that today, we've got a fantastic panel, and I will be asking them in a moment to each introduce themselves more fully and to give a little bit of a presentation. But they are Ryan Pilgrim, who is the CFO and ADM of Corporate Services at Transport Canada. We also have Kathleen Butler, who is the DG of the Horizontal Integration Directorate at the Canadian Revenue Agency. Also, we have Cliff Green with us, and he is a Senior Assistant Deputy Minister of Benefits and Integrated Services at ESDC. And finally, we have Shirley Carruthers, who is the DG of Financial Resource Planning at Global Affairs Canada. So really lucky to have you all with us. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are and for spending your time here with us and for sharing with us your forays into robotic process automation. So maybe just to get started, Ryan, maybe we could, just in that order that I introduced you, maybe Ryan, you could just start, and if you could give us, 5 minutes on sort of your experience with RPA, and we'll follow with Kathleen and Cliff and Shirley.
Okay. Thank you very much, Neil. Oh, there's a bit of an echo. Oh, well. Transport Canada is responsible for developing and overseeing the Government of Canada's transportation policies and programs so that Canadians have access to a transportation system that is safe and secure, green and innovative, and efficient. On slide 3 of the presentation we have today for transport, we see that transport's 3 years into a robust and multifaceted transformation agenda focused on modernizing the way we work and the services we provide to Canadians. Comme de nombreux ministères, Transport Canada va de l'avant avec un certain nombre d'initiatives.
Like others, we want to be able to use this technology to find innovative solutions to make our work more efficient and effective. We are using automated robots in so far as possible. This process automation does make it system-wise somewhat easier.
More efficient and modern. We noticed that many of our employees, as Neil said, spent a significant amount of time on data entry and manual processes. As a result, employees have less time for value-added work, such as strategic analysis in support of operational decision-making. Additionally, as pressure grows to deliver more with less and to respond to new and emerging issues, we need to find solutions to work more effectively. Moving forward with RPA has allowed us to automate work that is often mundane and time-consuming, such as our financial signing authority process for acting memos. This has freed up valuable resources to focus on more important tasks and initiatives. It also makes jobs more interesting and challenging, which is something that is welcomed by many of our employees. On slide 5, we see that due to its digital nature, RPA aligns extremely well with remote work situations. Despite our overnight transition to remote work in March, the implementation of RPA has continued to advance at an impressive pace at Transport Canada during the pandemic. We work currently on several initiatives, including salary forecasting for HR staffing actions, which will enable managers to access and update their salary forecasting information on any device via a digital layer or interface. At the National Emergency Control Center for COVID-19 reporting, manual tasks for data capture, analysis, and prioritization will be automated to help our intelligence officers better perform their essential duties. Our Marine Safety and Security team is leveraging RPA for their pre-arrival information reports, which will reduce the amount of time spent by officers manually verifying PDF reports from incoming vessels prior to arrival inspection. And our digital services team is also exploring the use of RPA for post updates to MS Teams channels and auto archiving of email. And there are numerous other RPA initiatives we're currently exploring for future implementation at TC. So that's it. Back to you, Neil.
Fantastic. Kathleen?
Yes, thanks. I was just going to go on mute. Unmute. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much for inviting me to come today. My journey with robotic process automation, or RPA, actually began a couple of years ago. I was in the space at work where we had just rolled out real-time assessing for tax returns. We had just rolled out real-time notices of assessment, or near real-time notices of assessment for Canadians. And we were talking about real-time rail for payment. And I thought, hey, in a world where I've got real-time service, I have real-time risk, and how am I going to be able to adapt to that? So looking at the programs for which I'm responsible, one of which is the ledgers. That's where we ultimately, the credits and debits all sort of balance out and we look for anomalies. But looking at the volume of transactions that go through there, trying to be able to deal with that in a real-time space, there aren't enough humans to be able to do that. So that's where I started looking at what some of the solutions would be, and that led me to, in some discussions with the FIs, to RPA. What we ended up doing was actually a bit of a proof of concept. And it was interesting because I was in the space where I expect a few of you are. I didn't even know what I didn't know. I didn't know what questions to ask. I didn't know who the experts were. I didn't have any experts with me, and I needed to sort of build something moving forward. So we actually launched a request for proposal to do a bit of a proof of concept without knowing all the answers. And that would be, I guess, one of the sort of my first suggestion would be launch and leap before you know the answers, because by the time you know the answers will likely have changed. And so, like I said, normally I would know the answers before I would launch, and in this case, I did not. But the proof of concept actually worked really well. It proved that it could work in my environment, but moreover, it was really interesting for me, because I sort of thought I was going to basically do what I do, which is sort of procure the technology. I was going to procure the solution, and that was going to be fantastic. And then I was going to just be able to maybe customize it a bit, similar to like buying a laptop or Excel, where it was actually more like engaging a new hire, because I had to socialize my bot. I had to introduce the bot to senior management, the team, and of course the union. I had to credentialize the bot, because that bot needs an audit trail. It needs access to the systems. It's going to be using our network, and so it needs to be security cleared, basically. In doing that security clearance, I needed to get IT security to help me authenticate that the bot would be able to work on our system. In terms of, Neil mentioned a macro, and that was where I'd heard some conversation about this being a macro on steroids or a macro on speed, but it was more than a macro. It was actually really nifty to watch, because in the process that we selected with the ledgers, it's something where the team itself would look for equivalent of like a needle in a haystack. And what this does is it removes the hay. So the bot would scan a file, create a common drive folder. I didn't realize it could sort of navigate in that manner, but create something that would be the file of the day, email the team members with items to look at, update the logs and listings that we need to do for the OAG. So that when the team got in the morning, basically the tedious part of the work was done, and they got to do all the fun analysis work that they actually enjoy doing, and I actually truly want to pay them for it. The way that we moved forward was, again, it was a methodology of start small with an intent to grow. So we started with the ledgers with something that was a fairly refined proof of concept that operated outside of our local area network. We moved that to something that was a more enterprise solution, and we used one product for the proof of concept, which was Automation Anywhere, and we used a different product in moving forward with something a little bit more enterprise-wide with the UiPath. Engage the professional services to help us, again, answer the questions that we didn't even know we needed to ask. And were successful in getting some processes launched live. So those processes, again, they surround more on the ledger side. They were on the accounting space because those were ones that are near and dear to my heart. So we moved forward with those. We've got a few additional ones in the hopper, things that are very much service focused for starters because of some of the new initiatives very much serving Canadians. So we've got a few that are in payment allocation and that kind of logic, and then looking at some verification space. I guess, like I said, I realize I'm reaching time cap. So if I would sum up a few things, basically, embrace the unknown. You're not going to know the answers, and by the time you do, the answers will have changed. Make a friend in contracting. Contracting can be your best friend in terms of procuring the solution that you need to. Make a friend in IT. In this case, this was something business-led. I've heard some organizations go business-led, some go IT-led. You really need to work in lockstep, business and IT together. Do engage the professional services to help you navigate the waters. And I would say leverage the Government of Canada network. We're all in this together. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kathleen. Cliff, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much. And Kathleen and I have done lots of work together over the last 6 months with COVID, and it's funny, I probably could have given your presentation and vice versa, because those lessons learned that you spoke about definitely really resonated with me as well. I think your points about making friend with professional services, contracting, and making a friend with the IT branch, absolutely critical. But the business has to be really fundamental there too. So if we can turn to the presentation I've shared. So just a few pieces that I'm going to focus on. There's a number of slides, but I won't speak to everyone by any means. I'm responsible for the delivery of the core statutory benefit programs that ESDC is responsible for. So Employment Insurance, Canada Pension Plan, Old Age Security, and the Service Canada part of the CERB as well. So we have lots and lots of benefits and that we pay out, over $100 billion every year. This year probably be close to double that. And lots of manual processes, even though we have lots of automation as well. On slide 2, it lists a bunch of benefits of using RPA. 2 that I would really focus on, one is minimizing repetitive tasks and the positive impact that has on staff. So Kathleen spoke about the need to engage unions and need to engage employees, absolutely. And actually what we found through that work is actually our employees are extremely happy with the introduction of the RPA processes, because it is allowing them to do more interesting work than a lot of the very repetitive tasks. The other thing I really see as a huge benefit about RPA is it can be done very quickly. We've embarked on this journey probably about 18 to 20 months ago, and you'll see a little bit of data points. We have used RPA for hundreds of thousands of transactions, generated millions of dollars in efficiencies over the course of those last 18 months. So what I would turn to now is slide 4, talking about getting started. One of the big things that we did in the initial 4 to 6 months was develop a proof of concept when we were first embarking on this. And we focused on one of our big business areas, so our pensions operations. And there we partnered with private sector, leveraged external support and expertise that have experience in RPA, but then very much made it a partnership between our IT branch and the business branch to demonstrate that what was possible, to then secure the additional investment that we needed to be able to scale up. And that's what we've been able to do. So after about a 4-month proof of concept, we then very quickly moved into scaling it up, first in the pensions area for lots of manual work that we have there, but we're also moving it much more broadly into other areas. Slide 5 speaks to that journey. So we've done it on manual processing work related to our pensions programs. So doing some simple calculations at times, similarly on our EI program. But also one of the most intriguing areas that we are in the midst of launching this month is actually using RPA in our call center environment as well. And actually using that to, based on a little bit of attended bots, so therefore our agents are watching over the bots, they can actually streamline a lot of that activity, which for me is a new area that we're heavily getting into now, and it has lots of similar potential to what we've realized in the other areas. We talk a lot, I give a lot of details about the different processes, but turning to slide 7 in terms of achieving meaningful outcomes. So since May of 2019, so almost a year and a half ago now, we have automated 352,000 different transactions through relatively minimal investment that we've been able to do. And that is just ramping up. So we've initiated that, and then we have a weekly dashboard. It's just dramatically increasing all the time. Right now, we're at the stage of about 10,000 at least transactions being automated every week. And sometimes it's not 100% automated. And typically what we've been able to see is about a 70% range of workload avoidance. So there are still some things that a bot can't do when there's a task that involves more judgment, but actually eliminating 70% of workload for the process we've identified as being absolutely critical. We also have some details about the number of bots that we have. So the unattended bots, which they don't take holidays, they're working 24/7, et cetera. We have 15 of those currently in operation. We also have 240 attended bots. So those are specifically in our call center that are being deployed right now. To close off on the futures for RPA, one of the things, so as all of us have been responding to the COVID emergency, a big challenge that we've been focusing on is we're about to transition from CERB onto the employment insurance program. We actually, over the course of the last 3 months, have developed and have implemented a RPA process for our records of employment. We received, I think, in the neighborhood of 8 million records of employment from employers, and we have used the RPA process to actually scan through hundreds of thousands, I think it's 600,000 or 700,000 records of employment, and eliminated the need for any manual intervention related to reviewing comments to determine what actually needed some type of intervention, and many of which did not. So that has been fundamental. RPA very quickly in the last 18 months, not only went from proof of concept, we are actually now deploying it in an urgent manner as we deal with lots of the different challenges that we have with the COVID-19 response. So thank you very much. Back to you, Neil.
Shirley, over to you.
Thanks. So good morning, everyone, or I guess actually good afternoon. So I was just going to start this morning just by talking a little bit about why RPA and why we at Global Affairs really decided that it was time for change. So really for us, it all started when we were developing our overall data management strategy. And we really saw RPA as an important first step to help us streamline and standardize processes, improve data quality, but I would say most importantly to really improve the overall service delivery to our clients. So I don't know about all of you, but I would certainly say that over the last few years, I've really noticed an increase in terms of one-off requests that my team is actually receiving from clients. And not only is the volume of data increasing, and the amount of time that we actually need to take in order to kind of, sift through all this data to generate all of these one-off requests. At the same time, we also see that the expectations from clients are actually increasing as well. And they want the data faster, and they actually don't even really want data. What they really want is they want information, or they really want insights into what data has to say. And then, of course, if you think about it from the employee perspective, and others have mentioned this morning as well, but particularly with attracting new talent into organizations, new talent doesn't want to come and work on old technologies, and they don't want to do mundane tasks. And thinking particularly about our students and millennials, really what they want is they want interesting work. So if you think about all of this and we think about, how do we evolve? Well, the first thing we really need to do is we need to really free up our resources and our time so that we're able to respond to all of these one-off and these more demands and requests. We also need more accurate and timely data. And that's really where I see RPA is coming in. And then as we start freeing up our resources and we can reallocate those resources to other tasks and improve our data quality, that's when we can start really moving on to better visualizations, improved analytics, using, some of the more advanced technologies such as AI, and eventually, really just having better integration of our data and our system. So just in terms of what we've done so far at Global Affairs, we've really started off by automating the salary management process. So we started off by choosing this process largely because of the organizational impact that we felt that it would have. So, roughly 50% of our overall operating budget is made up of salaries. And of course, as I was making my way through various governance committee and speaking to clients, and they were approaching me, what we realized was that they were having a really hard time kind of nailing down their forecasts and what it was that their requirements would be. Because the timeliness and the quality of the data that they were using to base their forecasts on, it really wasn't there to help support their processes. So that's where we started. I don't know if that was the best process to start with. It was really very complicated. But nevertheless, we did make some progress there. And then certainly, once the pandemic hit, we really had to reallocate a lot of the resources within my team, and we actually moved them to the Emergency Response Center to help out with the bigger and the larger Government of Canada repatriation of Canadians' effort. And one thing that happened when folks were there, and you'll hear from one of my resources this afternoon, Thomas Lang, while he was working in the Emergency Response Center, he really saw an opportunity to help with the larger government response, and he saw that there was a lot of inefficiencies in how they were processing the data and some of the business processes that they were due. And so we were actually able to kind of pivot our resources and help, to encourage some of the other or sections of the organization to embrace the RPA technology. And hopefully out of that, we'll see a lot of this growth within the organization. And I'll just stop there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Shirley. Great presentations, everyone. Great overview. I was impressed by, first of all, the breadth of the businesses that you spoke to. So we cover different corporate functions as well as operational service delivery program functions. So that's really remarkable, and that's an important takeaway for us, that this is a potentially useful technology across them. I'm also interested by your revelations that this is not business transformation. In other words, you could build a new system or you could automate the existing one. So that's an interesting tension maybe between the automate versus transform. Also, a couple of you made references to the payoff. Very interesting from a strategic point of view as we're looking to identify efficiencies. So really interesting. So with those points maybe in mind, I'm interested to know how you as sort of senior leaders see RPA fitting into your overall corporate strategy. Maybe, Ryan, I'll start with you because you mentioned the Transport Canada Digital Transformation Initiative, but then I'll open it up to others to see if they wanted to just make a comment about when you think of RPA, how does it fit into your overall business strategy for a department or agency?
Perfect. Thanks, Neil. Yeah, the goal of TC's transformation agenda is to create an innovative and value-driven organization that modernizes the way we work and improves the services we provide to Canadians. So RPA is a big part of it. It's incumbent upon us as government employees to use the best technology out there and not rely on the old ways of doing business. So RPA is a great example of a kind of a low-hanging fruit, something that's easy to implement, well, relatively easy, and not too timely or costly to do. So it makes us more efficient, allows our employees who are well-trained and well-educated to do value-added work instead of boring work, as people have talked about. So, we've canvassed our employees about how they feel about the advent of RPA. They're happy about it. They're doing better work. It allows us to do more for our clients, from a corporate services perspective. So yeah, no, at TC, it is really a big part of our transformation agenda and our strategy going forward to be innovative, digital, and effective. So this with Power BI and all kinds of other amazing tools that we're implementing are going to form a suite of time-saving and efficient products to allow us to, from my perspective, as corporate services and CFO, to do a better job supporting my clients. And then I talked about some of the RPA modules that we're implementing in the operational fields, and it's going to allow them to better serve Canadians. So from a corporate perspective, we'll better serve our clients, who are then better serving Canadians. So it's all part of the big the puzzle we're putting together to be better at what we do.
Nice. Anyone else?
Sure, Neil. Cliff here, I'll jump in. I'll just build off of a comment you made at the beginning related to truly transformative replacement of systems versus automating what we currently have. So at ESDC, like many other departments, I'm sure, Our IT infrastructure is, parts of it is extremely old. The OAS system is 57 years old. It's almost eligible to receive the OAS benefit now. And the EI system is much newer. It's only 47 years old. And while we do have very large scale transformative projects to replace those legacy systems, those are multi-million dollar projects over multiple years. What the great benefit that I've seen from our experience with the RPA is we're able to use this modern technology, which I think the analogy with the macro is not that far off, because that's immediately when I saw a slowed down video of our RPA, and it really made me think of the macros of WordPerfect actually as well from that analogy. And the great thing is that we can use the RPA technology over top of existing decades-old technology, and it's not limited by the fact that you have COBOL programmed language and platforms. It is not limited by that, and therefore those results and the return on investment to address what we've been focusing on as workload pressures is not something that you have to wait 2, 3, 4 years. It's once you get up and operating, it's actually within we have a cycle of every quarter we're releasing new RPA processes to really automate additional elements. So it's really quick compared to the broader transformation activities.
Great, thank you. Well, I think, Kathleen, you mentioned one of your lessons was to reach out interdepartmentally and seek support from other partners. And it's amazing to me, like I say, the breadth that's here. Do you have any advice for how we should work together across the government? I mean, it's a new area, and to expect every department to be a pioneer is maybe expecting a lot. Like, do you have any advice on how sort of together we can move into this area? And I'll open it up to others as well.
Thanks for the question. Actually, you're right, and that was sort of part of my comment of we're in this together and you're not alone. Initially, when we started on the journey, we really felt a little bit alone. Like I said, we didn't know who else was in the space. It was about 2.5 years ago. We really didn't have the experts. We have been sort of putting together a bit of it. We've got within our own organization, we've assembled a center of expertise. There's one within the business side and there's one within the IT side. So we've got those two centers of expertise so that people aren't just continually trying to ask those very much beginner questions. We can get you over that hump. But then there's been a bit of a community, and I think it was with the folks at the table here, been a bit of a community of experts that have been assembling throughout the Government of Canada. And just sort of we meet up and we have those discussions and exchange war stories, so to speak, because you find that somebody is indicating, oh, we're at this stage and we're encountering this hiccup, and somebody else has already overcome it, and somebody else has already tackled it in the world of procurement, let's say, in terms of how you managed to get that request for proposal through and get the tech that you needed, or how you were able to get past your business architecture solution. Like it's sort of there. I think that the expertise across government, I think that networking group that we do have that we sort of co-founded has been very useful. But I would recommend, as we've done, having a center of expertise on the business side and on the IT side.
A contact or a GCpedia page or something for the interdepartmental network?
Yes, I don't have that handy, but I know there is.
Okay, maybe we can send that to folks after if you have it.
Sure.
Okay, sorry, Ryan.
No, I was going to say we could provide the link to the interdepartmental working group. That's going really well. We started out working closely with GAC, who was inventing the wheel at the same time as us, and a lot of hurdles and struggles whenever you're embarking on a new initiative like this. But the more we share with one another, the more efficient we'll be, and the more savings we'll have for the federal government. Because why reinvent the wheel 100 times over at 100 different departments? It's not only this example, but across the board. Anytime a department delves into a new area, it's something they must do, is share it with other departments so that they harness that development and not start from scratch over and over and over in our own little silos on our own island. So I think this is a good example through RPA where the information is really being shared across different departments, and hopefully it's giving people the chance to embark on this journey, and from a financial perspective, but also kind of a fear perspective, because it sounds scary and cumbersome and impossible, but it's not. When they talk to folks at departments like ours or GAC or CRA or ESDC who have done it, and we show it in action, we show a video of the bot working that could be run off a tablet or a computer or whatever the case may be. It works. It's simple. It is just macros. It's like fancy Excel doing things behind the scene all night and all day while we're doing other important work.
Nice. Shirley, did you want to add into that? You may be on mute.
Yeah.
There you go.
Got it. Sorry. So I was just going to add, I think that, there's definitely opportunities, through these working group mechanism that we've started. But I think in general, as the government of Canada kind of moves more to shared platforms, so I'm thinking about, the government's move to SAP, for example, to the next generation. I think that as more and more government departments kind of make those shifts and we standardize the processes, because really to be able to take advantage fully of the automation and the shared programming and all the thought that goes into it, we need to have standard systems and standard business processes. So I think that these projects really present definitely a great opportunity for the government in Canada in general to share.
Fantastic. Well, it's interesting. I think it sounds great. It sounds really like a kind of an obvious thing to do to automate these processes. But a couple of you spoke about, the changes in terms of efficiencies and also the new skills that are required, or maybe the differences in supervising a bot versus, doing your normal job. I'm interested in what the challenges were for you. I mean, where were the hurdles in terms of moving into RPA, it being a new area? Cliff, maybe we can start with you, Cliff, and just if you could tell us what a few of the barriers are, and if we could just actually hear from each of you to hear whether there were particular barriers that you experienced in pathfinding in this area.
Sure, thanks. Maybe I'd focus on two, because within the department, we were the first area to embark on RPA. On the IT side, having something as simple as having the dedicated servers to be able to run the bots on was actually quite a big challenge, and we had to pathfind in terms of the security credentials and elements associated with that. We actually, for a short period, because it took some time for us to be able to address the server issues, we actually ran our bots on a bunch of desktops, actually, which was in a very secure area that we had under lock and key. But our challenge became quickly the one room that we had with all these desktops in. It was getting too crowded because we kept wanting to add more bots, and at that point it was via desktop. So actually, some of the underlying very basic technology infrastructure, such as servers, which I know across town there are some challenges in accessing dedicated servers is a challenge. And then the other piece was figuring out what the appropriate procurement approach would be, because there certainly is procurement involved. So definitely for the tool itself. So we've tested out a couple of the different solutions. So UiPath, that Kathleen mentioned, is one of the bots that we have used, and there's a few others that are available. Trying to figure out the right procurement strategy that you can go on that journey, but also not be committed to one solution if you're just doing it as a proof of concept. There were elements there. But then a key solution that also that really helped us wade through this was we did bring in some external expertise, so some consulting services to really help us kind of figure out that roadmap and be able to advance things quite quickly. We have a transition underway right now. We are still using some consulting services, but our plan is less and less as we are developing that expertise, both within the business side, but also within the IT team.
Nice. Shirley, how about you?
Sorry about that. I think I'm getting a little better with my mute.
Great.
So I think in the beginning of the process, I think like others had mentioned, we definitely, it was the procurement, it was the obtaining servers, it was all of those things. But I think that now that, we have the infrastructure set up, I think it's really more about change management And I think that, with each of our innovation, like our automation projects, we really need to think about what the business outcome is going to be with each one. Because I think, as we think about, how it's going to impact the client, how it's going to impact the responsibilities for each person kind of going down the chain. And so what we've really found is that, it's really not good enough to say, yeah, we're going to reallocate work. I think we really have to have a really clear idea of how we're going to reallocate that work as we go. And I'm thinking about, as we're kind of automating some of our financial processes, you do the first one, there's not a big impact. Second one, maybe not a big impact. But as you start automating more and more processes, it starts becoming, challenges in terms of day-to-day kind of activities of some of your resources. And you really don't want your resources to become discouraged before you kind of implemented everything. So you need to really be ready as you go, and to really, pay attention to that communication, quality assurance.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen.
Yeah, there are a few challenges. I mean, it's being a large organization such as ourselves, one was the comms piece in terms of getting the message out. I would say that, in terms of, we didn't have to worry about the servers in the same way because we actually went with a method of certifying the product for use on our local area network. So it's available for use on the LAN, but that took longer. So it was a bit of an additional hurdle in that way. But what it's going to set us up for is very much a sort of a teach a man to fish kind of approach, where the professional services are helping us get geared up a little slower at the start, but we feel realize some long-term benefits, and so that's sort of sort of some short-term pains at the onset. The credentialize, I mean, being able to have credentials for the bot, that kind of thing, involve new information management policies, that kind of thing. That's unexpected a little bit. And then just getting people on side, because there's a great, I mean, we enhance our system on a regular basis, and there's great pride in folks in these larger scale redesign type initiatives, and to say, no, I'm just going to implement this automated solution, and we can do that another time or later, and this is going to supersede that. It's a little bit of a mental hurdle for folks, and so a bit getting past that, but it's been great.
Excellent. Ryan?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything the folks have said so far. And just one other item we've worked on over the summer, it's the digital layer, the user interface. We found that is an important spot to get right, because if it's too cumbersome to use, RPA, or to enter data into the system to then be, processed, then people won't use it. It won't be adopted as well. So we spent some time and money and energy this summer developing the digital layer. We used a product called Appian to support users, and it's a really neat, slick looking system where you log in, and you have we've kind of meshed our Power business intelligence report there as well. So in terms of staffing and salary forecasting, you see all your financial data, and as you enter the system, then you could enter your staffing actions accordingly. So if you say, okay, I'm going to hire 3 more FI4s because I feel the need, and then you look at the system, you see you have a salary deficit, maybe you don't do it. So it's kind of a neat integrated user interface that people are liking. We're just prototyping it now, but it seems to be good or well received.
Great, thanks. Well, I mean, on the one hand, what you guys have described are projects that are faster, not that expensive, and give a payoff, and are applied to functions that are repetitive, whether they're corporate or service. This seems like a ripe area that anyone in government could champion. And yet, here you are, all senior leaders speaking on this, because it's probably so new and requires that kind of senior leadership. I'd be interested to know how critical you think it is to have a senior leader sponsor versus having sort of grassroots capability here. Any reflections from anyone on that? Maybe start, Shirley.
So I think definitely, senior leadership is very important. I think we've talked a lot about some of the, challenges that everyone's going to face in terms of, moving RPA forward. And so really, to having a senior leader is going to be there to kind of support and help you break down barriers it's incredibly important. And even if we're thinking about, when we're kind of moving it to other areas of business, particularly at GAC, and thinking about back to that pandemic and with the consular group, I know that, for example, when my resource had kind of noticed, hey, we can really help to kind of move this process forward. We can use RPA as a means to kind of free up resources and time and, help things happen a little bit quicker. And there's a lot of resistance even at the working level. And they're like, it's not the time, we're so busy. We don't have time to kind of sit with you and work through this process. And I really think it really took, DG to DG, ADM to ADM phone calls to say, hey, why don't we just give this a try? Let's leverage this, and we can actually, we'll see a lot of benefits on the back end. And so, it's important.
Excellent. Kathleen?
100% agree with Shirley. I think that people notionally like the idea of having an automated solution, but when it actually comes down to the actual work of that, dedicating resources, reallocating people off of X and onto Y, and seeing those solutions, I think that that's where having that senior leadership, you can actually move things along. It's easy enough to maintain our status quo. Change is hard, and this is different and new, and therefore scary. So being able to sort of smooth the waters, do the appropriate pushing, clear the roadblocks, give staff the confidence that they can move forward, and then it doesn't solely come from the top, but I think being able to sort of paint that direction and give the teams the tools they need, absolutely, it's critical.
Kind of ironic that in order to automate, you need to empower people in your organization. Ryan, any other comments on that?
Yeah, no, executive sponsorship and support is key, just for what Kathleen and Shirley discussed, but also financially having the money to put towards these projects, because there's a lot of other initiatives that are very worthy and in need of funding, and then also just to support people in the allocation of human resources to do the work, and then also the change to help soften the potential, blow of change. Change is never easy, and this is something that's new, and having people, discuss it and, repeat the same kind of good, information about the products and the benefits, and to make it less scary to the masses, I think has been really, helpful at TC.
Great. And Cliff, it sounds like maybe ESDC has turned a corner on bots, given the number of bots that you showed. Has it become mainstream at ESDC in your branch?
I would say yes, within the branch it is becoming mainstream, and I think that does tie to the need for senior leadership. We all work in silos, we try to break down those silos, but it's very difficult at the lower level you are to be able to break down those silos. We started in one business area, and then we've expanded it across different areas within my branch, and now we are looking to expand it even further. And the other key element was about momentum. There will be some barriers that will pop up, and I think the senior leadership on it is needed to maintain that momentum, because to some of the other points, it is change, and the status quo is very powerful, and the senior leadership pushing behind to be able to keep that momentum when there will be little barriers, whether it be, so we had lots of questions on the privacy side, some on the security side, some of the basic IT enablement, and then the business people, and also working with the unions too. We haven't talked much about it. One of the speakers spoke briefly about it. Like proactive communication with the unions about what this is, why it's being introduced, and being open and transparent about what the impact on the workforce is really important as well. And to do that effectively, I think you need senior leadership to do that. So.
Right on. Now, it does sound, though, like with RPA, you start in smaller, chewable chunks. Ryan, I think I remember Transport having a build-a-bot session where they brought in external folks who just helped them define the problem and sort of scope out the area. I'm not even sure it costed anything up front, but kind of turning it into a smaller, like instead of changing a whole system or a group of systems, kind of doing it in chewable chunks. So does that make a difference? Does that make it easier for senior leaders or teams to embark on this?
Yeah, 100%. Starting out with something small and achievable, and you work out the kinks in that kind of process that's not as kind of has less of an impact on folks is the way to go, because there are a lot of hurdles and kinks as you learn, and processes and exceptions and how to map those exceptions. So we started with the financial siding authority process and really learned what bots were all about from there. And we use that kind of infrastructure of having, you know, all the employees TC inputted into the system and the bot to then build upon it. And there's a temptation to grow quickly and to do all at once, but it would be, you know, certain to fail if you did that. So start small, learn, adjust, get help from friends at other departments to guide the way, and slowly but surely you'll have a pretty neat product that can save a lot of time and money. So yeah.
And Kathleen, you in particular had mentioned a more agile approach, jumping in with both feet, coming in with the problem without having predetermined the solution. So this idea of doing it as a project, a pilot, as a phase, I mean, I guess that sort of imbues the approach that you took at CRA.
It was one of the only ways I could move forward in the speed that I did. With the proof of concept, it actually moved fairly quickly. As I mentioned, when we brought in something more enterprise-wide, I needed to, it was a very, you know, time-intensive and important security screening that needed to take place for something that could be widely used across the agency. We're having something that I was able to pilot small and say, it might fail. It might not work. Like we're going to learn as we go, and we might have gotten it entirely wrong, but it's a small investment, and I think it's worth our while. And let's see what we learn from it, and let's see, you know. And it was the only way we were able to move forward. I'd say if you start trying to think you're going to do a grand solution, you're going to have a heck of a time trying to sell that, and you're going to have a heck of your time wrapping your head around all the little things that are going to go wrong, because just expect that something's going to go wrong as you navigate the waters, and plan to use it as learning.
Fantastic. Well, we've just got a few minutes left, and what I'd like to do is just give you each a chance to give a parting thought to our audience. So all of the public servants on the line, some of whom we saw from the survey, know a little bit about RPA and maybe a lot about RPA, but others, like me, this is a new area and we may just be getting into it. So maybe, Shirley, we could start with you, and if you just have a word of advice for our viewers.
Yeah, sure. I think my word of advice or caution might be, you know, it does take a long time to get it up and running. Hopefully, you know, others can kind of learn from what we've done. But I think that, you know, we generated a lot of excitement at the beginning of the project through our proof of concept and a lot of engagement from stakeholders. And I think, you know, we did lose a little bit of that momentum just given the fact that it took so long to get things up and running. But I would say, you know, don't lose sight of the end game, and you will get there. There's lots of benefits to be enjoyed once you do.
Fantastic. Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, no, fully agree with Shirley. There are some bumps in the road as you begin, but it's good, as Cliff said, to maintain that momentum. And I think any product or tool that can save people from entering the same data in multiple different sites is a good idea, because I mean, it's just logical to not do the same thing over and over and over again unnecessarily. If something that could prevent that is the right thing. So that's for the data input, and then the data extract, using the Power Business Intelligence to extract data in dashboards like pre-canned data, to not have people throughout the department extracting in Excel the same data in different shapes and forms, and some good and some bad. I mean, the two working in partnership is really powerful and gets a better product quicker and more cost effectively. So it's not scary. Talk to Shirley; she'll walk you through step by step. But it sounds scary, but it's not. There's folks now that many departments have already kind of jumped into this that we're able to support to others who are just starting out. So go for it. Thanks, Ryan. Kathleen, how about you?
I would say stay positive. It's definitely it's a journey, and it isn't a one day. You'll be continuously learning. I would say leverage your network. not just internally, but externally, leverage the Government of Canada network. It's definitely, there's some great learning to be had. And I would say advertise your success stories. I find that getting the message out about, hey, we automated this process and we realized this saving, or it had this benefit, it ends up reaching some subject expert in some program you hadn't thought about, and suddenly you're solving a pain point. So that would be what I would suggest.
Fantastic. Thank you. Cliff, last word.
Thanks, Neil. What I would say is get started. Obviously, people participating on this, you're interested in it, you think there's some potential within your organization. Highly encourage you to get started. Leverage the GOC network, because I doubt there is, we're still collectively relatively early stages, but I'm very confident that we collectively have automated some business process that is very similar to an existing process that some of you might be thinking about doing. So leverage that network and just get started. For me, it was incredible. Like that, it was less than 12 months from, we had a proof of concept, it was less than 6 months from initial proof of concept to actually having it operationalized. And so but only once you get started. So definitely encourage you to get started and leverage that network.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for sharing your experiences. It is amazing to hear about the Pathfinder departments, and it actually makes things a lot less scary when you can see that departments from all different kinds of functions have brought RPA in, and in a quick period of time have shown real benefits. And of course, there are lessons learned and hurdles that you've shared as well that we need to look at. So thanks again for that. I truly believe that every public servant should have a line of sight on AI in their business, and RPA offers a really straightforward and intuitive path to having automation to improve your business. So that is fantastic. Thank you once again. So if you're curious about some real practical applications, we have those for you coming up just now. So I'll turn it back over to Joanna, and thanks for tuning into the panel.
Well, thank you once again on behalf of the school, all the panelists and Neil for participating in the discussion today. It was super inspiring, and I am very, very hopeful about our future and what value we'll be able to bring to the federal public service and beyond with all of this. So we will begin the second portion of the event in about 5 minutes. We will get to hear 5 presentations that highlight the ways RPA is being applied today in the Government of Canada. So go ahead, stretch your legs, build a Joanna bot that'll fetch me coffee. That would be great. And we will see you back here in a few minutes. If you have a chance, if you want to check out some virtual kiosks that were built for this event, you can do that as well. You should have received the link with your information package earlier today. We will see you shortly. Hello again, and welcome back virtually to the Canada School of Public Service. My name is Joanna Finicchio, and I am your MC today. La deuxième partie de l'événement sur l'automatisation robotisée des processus.
The second part of our presentation today is going to be even more interesting than the first. We will have 5 presentations that will be followed by a discussion. And so I ask you to prepare your questions now.
Administrative details to support your experience during this event. To optimize your viewing experience, we recommend you disconnect from your VPN or use a personal device to watch the session when possible. Bien que l'événement d'aujourd'hui est en anglais, la traduction simultanée est toujours à votre disposition.
Although the presentations will be in English, there is simultaneous interpretation for you.
To ask a question, please go to the top right corner of your screen, click the Participate button, and enter your question along with your email address. During the Q&A period, we will pick some of the best questions to discuss. Now, let's move on to the first showcase of the day. I would like to welcome Thomas Lang at Global Affairs Canada. Thomas, over to you.
Hello, thanks for the introduction. I'm Thomas Lang from Global Affairs. Shirley was part of the the earlier session this afternoon and talked a little bit about what we've done at Global Affairs in terms of our automation journey. And I would like to spend some time today to discuss how successful journeys begin with process discovery. This is a part that is unavoidable You have to, conduct process discovery to implement an RPA solution, but there are, best practices in how to do that. And I'd like to talk about some of those best practices today. So some of the benefits of proactive process discovery, if we could flip to the next slide, are really, maximizing what you can get out of your automation. So by doing the process discovery up front and not simply picking the first idea that comes to mind and jumping into proof of concept, for example, it's easy to do that and find a good use case and get all excited and go feet first into that automation journey. But I would really recommend hitting the brakes before you do that and conducting a thorough process discovery before picking one process to move forward with. It'll save you a lot of time and headaches doing that, and will position you to highlight and find the proper process to start with, and it will also build a backlog for you to continue your automation, because this isn't like another solution where it's very specific and one use only. You're buying a software that has a lot of capability and can be deployed for many different functions. So you're going to get that increased return by doing your proactive process discovery at the start. We could go to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about how RPA journeys, they have a lot in common actually with planning a trip. And you'll see over the next few slides, I do have a bit of a travel bug and it's starting to itch, but I think there are a lot of apt comparisons between RPA planning and planning a trip. The first being, what are your objectives? So if we could go to the next slide. When you're planning a trip with your family or with different travel partners, there's going to be a lot of different considerations, how you define what kind of trip you want to take, right? If I asked 10 people in the audience what their idea of an ideal trip would be, I might get 5 to 10 different answers. Some people may want a relaxing beach vacation. Somebody else may want an adventure travel experience, right? And RPA, similarly, there's a lot of different objectives that you can go for. Cost efficiency, so return on investment could be one thing, but that may not necessarily be compatible with something like increasing your client service. So I think it's important to have those high-level discussions with your senior leadership in your organization to determine, what are we really trying to achieve and how are we going to measure the success of our automation? Because if you don't have this conversation at the start, you may be disappointed or surprised at some of the results at the end, and it'll help you, triage and refine the process opportunities throughout your organization if you're aligned on that high level, objective of what you're trying to achieve. And this, is part of governance. The second piece is really about your organizational limitations. When you're traveling, you would have a budget perhaps, and you have a certain number of days of vacation, so your time, right, that you can travel. So you're not going to plan a huge month-long vacation if you have only a week of vacation available, right? Likewise, you may want to focus in on processes that are shorter in length and simpler if you have time constraints or budget constraints. Things like operational context become really important. There may be areas in your business that have already experienced a lot of change and have change fatigue. So you may want to steer clear of those processes for a period of time. You may have limited access to project resources internally or externally, access to subject matter experts, and your ability to maintain a solution will determine as well what kind of complexity you want to take on. So if we go to the next slide, the combination of these objectives and limitations are really kind of the sweet spot of where you want to focus the bulk of your time, at least initially. So if we take the trip example on the left there, if you're trying to organize something family friendly and you want to give your kids a cultural experience, but you have a limitation of limited budget and maybe the travel restrictions of COVID are in place, for example, that's going to really narrow down the areas, the travel opportunities that you're going to want to explore further. Maybe you want to do a camping trip, maybe you want to plan a weekend trip to Montreal, or rent a cottage nearby. Those would be feasible activities given the climate and those objectives and limitations. Likewise for RPA, maybe your objectives are client service and you want to increase the productivity, and your limitation is the amount of time that you have to do this and your access to subject matter experts. So maybe you want to explore resolving some IT service desk tickets, or working on the program delivery for a certain part of your business, or maybe HR staffing, just as a few examples. So I think it's really important here too, after you've narrowed down this intersection of objectives and limitations, you've got that governance, high-level governance piece out of the way, to really get your people involved. It creates a lot of excitement and buy-in for doing RPA. Once you've gotten through, the objectives and limitations, get those business areas involved and create as extensive a bucket list as you can possible. And then you'll have a ton of things that you can go through, a finer, funnel, basically a process discovery funnel. And we'll talk about that here. So there's kind of 3 phases of this discovery pipeline to funnel your process opportunities to. So there's 3 stages. There's the triage, the assessment, and the analysis. So you're basically, putting your processes through a sieve and gradually reducing these opportunities down to the best opportunities to proceed with. So at a high level, triage is does the automation have potential or not? The assessment, you're really looking into it a little bit more closely. You're casting away the ones that aren't automatable in the previous step, and you're focusing on whether or not this process is suitable, whether you should actually automate it. And then in the analysis, we're looking at that in even more detail at the task level and seeing how those priorities should be, ranked against one another. If you could go to the next slide, please. The triage criteria, this is really, if you compare it back to the travel example, this is looking at a high level. Maybe you're doing a Google flight search, or you're kind of exploring a high level here, within your constraints, your limitations and objectives. You're looking at things like the level of digitization. So how much work is actually done in a digital way, online, with readable data, structured data. You're going to look at how well that process is defined, how stable it is, and the number of FTEs or transactions that are flowing through there, as well as how stable and complex the technical architecture is. So, if a system is going to be replaced soon, that would be, one to steer clear of. So the next step, the process assessment criteria, that's really what you're doing to start that comparison process between your different opportunities. You're going to be assessing things like the automation potential, how easy it is to implement, and that's largely based on your experience and how easy that process is in general. From a user perspective, because we are emulating what a user is going to be doing. And then we're also going to measure that benefit opportunity and how you would rank these different benefit categories would go back and would link to how you've prioritized your objectives. So the next slide shows kind of a visualization of that kind of process assessment. After you put it through these different criteria, you can start to map out which ones are ready, more ready than others, ones that you want to cultivate further or incubate, and ones that you totally want to defer that aren't suitable at the current time. So this is really plotting these opportunities against a matrix of automation potential and implementation. You can focus on the ready ones first, and then once those are done, you can start looking at ways that you can ease the implementation for the ones in the cultivate section, and how you can get the ones in incubate, how you can increase the automation potential there. Maybe it's a case of digitizing pieces of the steps, for example. So the next and the last step of the process is the process analysis. And here I really recommend to go off the beaten path. This is the step that often gets overlooked the most, is going in and understanding at a task level what your process does. So it's really documenting every step of that process. It is an arduous task, but by this time you've already done a basic filtering of your processes, and you should start with the ones with the highest automation potential and ease of implementation, and then carry on throughout your backlog. So here you'll understand even better why these processes are in the cultivate section or incubate, and you can make recommendations how to move those into the ready stage, and you can finalize the prioritization of these processes through this step. You go to the next slide. When I say task, I really mean a single piece of work within a business sub-activity. So, just like the curves of this mountain switchback road, you can't skip one of these pieces of knowledge on a process. You have to understand at a very high level what process area we're talking about before you get into the processes that fit there underneath. Likewise, the sub-processes, so different activities, and then the task. And at some point, once we actually decide to move forward with a particular automation, you're going to have to actually figure out the process on a mouse click by click basis. So that doesn't need to be done at this point in the process, but certainly that would be the next step if you do decide to move forward with a particular automation. And I think we always, have a tendency to look for shortcuts. Are there any for process discovery? I would say no. Process discovery and doing it ahead of time is actually the shortcut. I think there's some questions we would get, like, can you copy what other organizations have done? I think this is a great, tool that you can use. You can interact with different departments, but I think the legwork still needs to be done to understand, your processes, how and when they should be automated before you start, trying to copy what other organizations have done. And, just because your first automation idea is a really good one, take the time to validate that. You may find that while comparing it with other automation opportunities, that there's actually a better one to start off with. And there are different tools you can use, process mining tools. The different automation software have tools that you can leverage to help you with your analysis, but a lot of it is, going into the business areas and talking with different teams. And just to wrap things up, if you could go to the last slide, this is really crucial for RPA. It's the final, or sorry, it's the number one thing in my view that defines whether or not you're going to be successful. There's a lot of upfront work setting up for RPA, but at the end of the day, how you do your process discovery is how you're going to succeed. Once you're done this, then you'll be clear sailing, and you'll have a lot of things in your backlog, and it's a constant rinse and repeat process. I'd like to thank you for your time, and look forward to discussing in the panel.
Thank you so much, Thomas. That was great. Maybe to scratch the travel itch in times of COVID, could we just refocus our energy towards automating processes? We should start a club for that. Next up, from Transport Canada, we have Irina Krasteleva and Melanie Cockerline. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Many thanks for attending this session today and for letting us, Melanie and myself, to present our RPA journey at Transport Canada. My name is Irina Krasteleva, and I work for Digital Services Directorate. So I represent IT, and I'm looking after a large portfolio of back office application. You name it, HR, finance, ATIP, communication. I also support some security applications and programs like security screening, aviation security, air cargo security. As you can see, my portfolio literally screams for robotics process automation. Almost every group and business unit has opportunities for automating and streamlining their processes. You'll see a bit later in the presentation some examples and stories about this. And now over to you, Melanie. And please, next slide.
Thanks, Irina. Welcome, everyone. My name is Melanie Cockerline, and I work as a manager at Transport in the Financial Policy and Systems team. And I can tell you that Transport's RPA initiative has been the most interesting initiative of my career to date. I sometimes joke that when I meet somebody new and they ask what I do for a living, and I tell them that, well, I'm an accountant and I work in the public service. That's generally where that topic ends and we move on to another subject. But I can say that when I meet somebody new and I tell them that I'm an accountant working in the public service and I work with robots, well, many questions follow. And if we could flip to the next slide, please. I truly believe that that's because RPA is just so interesting and intriguing. As Thomas demonstrated by his great presentation, RPA is an investment. There's foundational upfront work to map and lean your processes, and it's an investment in time, energy, and resources. But it's been so far our experience at Transport that it's an investment worth making. As our CFO and ADM of Corporate Services mentioned earlier in the event, TC began its RPA journey as part of its digital roadmap in an effort to drive innovation and improve end user experience. And on the next slide, we demonstrate that the reason we decided to explore RPA is because we were facing challenges that I am sure will sound all too familiar across departments. We were spending a lot of time on manual data entry. There was a lack of integration among our systems. And as a result, a lack of capacity for more strategic work. So essentially, the service demand was outstripping our ability to respond to new and emerging issues. So on the following slide, in the last quarter of fiscal year 2018-19, the Finance and Administration Group conducted a proof of concept to determine if RPA was possible, but also feasible. And turns out it was possible and feasible. So with these favorable proof of concept results, TC embarked on a capital project in fiscal year 1920 to implement RPA within Finance and Administration. And now, today, in the current fiscal year, RPA work continues across Transport Canada as a part of continued operations, and we're focusing ourselves to build on our knowledge and refine our expertise. And speaking of expertise, this year an RPA Center of Excellence was established, and Irina will speak to that in just a moment. So, what were our benefits from our RPA work today? Well, on the next slide, we can tell you that when RPA is implemented well, there's definitely an increase in satisfaction, great efficiency gains. As we know, bots can operate 24/7. There's an increase in productivity, better data quality. But how about some concrete examples? Well, specific to our Departmental Financial Signing Authority automated solution, which is a mouthful, we eliminated the processing backlog. Response times for this particular automation decreased from, on average, a week and a half to the same day. And data entry errors were essentially eliminated. And as a result, we saw an increase in accuracy. So what did we learn? Well, on the next slide, we highlight that, and as Thomas already demonstrated, actually, setting the foundation with proper process mapping is essential for a successful automation. It's also very, very important to involve and solicit the participation of your subject matter experts. So the people who are actually doing the job currently in part of that process. We also learned that change is hard, and as such, it warrants attention and a solid change management strategy that's focused and driven by end user experience. I definitely recommend to engage your stakeholders throughout the entire process. Keep them informed, solicit their help, and if you can, make them champions of the change. And on the next slide, some of the things we wanted to highlight is that throughout our automation journey, it became apparent that it's important to select the right tool, the right application for the right job. Use all of the tools available in your toolkit. And if you can, start small. It's our recommendation that if you can learn your lessons in a small contained automation, it's the best way. At TC, we leverage an agile delivery methodology, and that works really, really well for us. And perhaps the most important is that at TC, we learned fairly early on that in order for our RPA work to be sustainable, we needed to build a foundation of internal capabilities. So how can you do this? Some good suggestions are that if you're leveraging a partner, I know the panel of executives spoke about partners and leveraging them a little earlier. If you are going to leverage a partner for your RPA work, I highly suggest you build in RPA knowledge transfer sessions and potentially operate a combined structured team and have your employees job shadow the consultants. Leverage the RPA training that is included with your licensing, and most importantly is just enable your employees to take on this challenge. As I mentioned at the start of this presentation, TC is currently working very, very hard to solidify our internal capabilities. And as part of that, an internal RPA COE, Center of Excellence, was established this year. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Irina to tell us all about it.
Thank you, Melanie. So let's switch to the next slide. And I want to talk to you a little bit about Center of Excellence that we're building this year in Transport Canada to support RPA initiatives within this department. The whole idea of Center of Excellence is fairly new and exciting. We're moving away from project-based initiatives and building internal expertise that will support RPA work, deliver RPA solutions, guide groups across department, and also manage relationships with the partners in TC and across Canada and with industry. This is raison d'etre of Center of Excellence and one of many reasons why I'm here today speaking in front of you. To set up Center of Excellence, and I would just say not just RPA in general, to set up a Center of Excellence, we have to build the following three pillars: operating model, operating support, infrastructure, licenses, people, train your employees, train, contracts in place. If you're leveraging, and especially at the beginning, you probably will leverage professional services. So imagine like a well-oiled machine supporting RPA bots going into production and onboarding new initiatives. Speaking of onboarding new initiatives, the second pillar, we need to have the governance established. How do we select processes to automate? How we prioritize? Something was mentioned at the executive panel, the collaboration between business and IT is a key. So from my personal experience working with finance, working with other groups, having engaged business, it's almost like criteria number one. It trumps everything. You need to have business leading the change and willing to invest their time and their resources. And of course, the communication aspect and change management. As COE role, this is our job to communicate and explain RPA benefits to the department, communicate and changes to impacted users. Let's go to the next slide. The next slide is a perfect example of our aggressive, ambitious, but still doable roadmap. Expectation is that in 2 years, the Center of Excellence will become self-funded. So funded from savings that we generate to departments or funds reallocation coming from various groups. At this point, we are in the process of building foundation and exploring various products, engaging various groups for pilot projects. So we're starting doing several pilot proof of concept initiatives, and as we speak, we build our foundation for Center of Excellence. So let's go to the next slide, where we're showing examples of a few initiatives that we are currently exploring. Something that our team, Center of Excellence team, is building literally as we speak. One, and it was obviously a new initiative with National Emergency Center caused by COVID situation, is to build bots for parsing publicly available information and notifying NACC officers on any significant changes. Oh, sorry. So can we go to next slide, please? So, for example, we have both watching Air Canada and WestJet onboarding updates, websites and Twitter feeds, and then reporting to our team channel if changes that are impacting NACC officers. And as a good example is the work with marine safety. We're building a bot that monitors Outlook mailbox for PDFs forms that been sent about incoming ships and vessels. The bot checks those incoming PDFs and validate errors, reducing amount of time officers spend for manually correcting data. Some other areas where prototyping and building bots include optical character recognition for parsing documents and invoices like taxi cheats. We're also looking at RPA for test automation, which I personally found a very interesting twist. As you know, and again, it was mentioned at the executive panel, RPA is a macro on steroids. So RPA was developed, originated from a family of test automated software. And now we start looking at RPA for automated tests again. Let's go to next slide. So in conclusion, my last slide, I just want to repeat the message that Melanie shared already. Do not underestimate the value and need for change management. Each stream, each group, and each stakeholder will need a change management strategy. For developers, it's a paradigm shift on how we build application. There are no longer custom-built solution you used to do in Visual Studio or Eclipse. It's a low-code solution. The beauty of low-code solution allowing us to have bots built in days and weeks, not in months and years. For business users, the benefits of owning business processes and having ability to develop solution, again, by leveraging low-code solution and actually controlling the process of digitizing their business roles. And then the last but not least for end users, the message we keep repeating at all times, it's not about taking away your jobs or being replaced by robots. It's about making your job more manageable, more meaningful, and eliminate any routine tasks. So this concludes our mini presentation, and you will have opportunity to ask questions during the panel discussion in a few minutes. And also feel free to contact us directly if you would like to schedule a deeper dive or a demo of any of the RPA solutions that we talked today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irina and Melanie. Just really quickly, the plot line of an accountant in the public service working with bots, that is definitely a show I would watch. Thanks again for that. Up next, we have Ranjan Banerjee coming to us from the Communications Security Establishment. Ranjan, over to you.
Great, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ranjan Banerjee, and I'm the manager of Program Office at Communications Security Establishment. I just started there last week, so that's probably why the event webpage still has me at CBSA. It's been a hectic few weeks, that's for sure, transitioning out of one and into a new job. So today I'm going to talk to you about some operational and strategic elements of RPA, with anecdotes from my experiences throughout my career in the government of Canada. I bring a somewhat unique insight into the RPA world. I entered the government as a policy analyst some 24 years ago, and then returned after retraining in IT. As such, I have spent the majority of my career in the GC being a liaison between business and IT, predominantly because of my ability to be able to translate requirements from a business context into IT and vice versa, to be quite honest. If we go to the next slide, resource mobility is a key. It's a key aspect of life in the government, but it presupposes the availability of skilled resources that are in demand. However, RPA is a new platform in the government of Canada, and as such, skilled resources are often scarce, and those who do attain a level of proficiency are sought after both in the public service and in the overall marketplace. As I met with various departments to discuss RPA, was continually felt a little bit under fire about losing my resources who were capable of delivering solutions. That's okay. We'll come back to mobility in the government a little bit later as well. A key element of management, in my view, is to be very employee-centric in your approach. I've long held the belief that by providing opportunities to employees to explore other departments and agencies, you demonstrate that you value them and their careers, not simply getting projects or initiatives delivered. For example, last summer I was managing a student who was matrixed into my team. Ultimately, he ended up going off to D&D for a while. We kept in touch regularly, and 6 months later, he reached out saying he wanted to return. He loved the environment, He loved the team dynamic. And it was great. He came back. He came back with a new skill sets, and he became an even stronger contributor to our team. And we were only too happy to have him back. Mobility is a benefit within the GC, and by opening up these mobility paths, we can attract and retain more talented people. Fostering and supporting mobility within the GC community will allow organizations that are more mature in their development or use of RPA to provide leadership opportunities to their employees, while organizations that are just beginning their journey can give a bit of a kickstart to their initiatives. While it's difficult to argue against the benefits to mobility, it is important to also discuss the various skills required for RPA implementations in order to understand what these skills are that are needed. So at its core, you really need, obviously, an RPA developer. You need an RPA architect. You need an RPA analyst, who's really a business analyst in many respects. And you need an RPA champion. RPA resources are not only important as it relates to automation projects, RPA is also key for digital transformation, and therefore can be leveraged as an enabler for cloud migration and modernization by avoiding having to build expensive APIs to legacy systems, and for automated testing, all of which are key aspects for any government department or agency, thus making resources skilled in this technology further sought after within the GC. Another example of RPA skills helping to build out other solutions is the development of a chatbot that I had seen recently that can enable employees to access information on how to do basic tasks like ordering hardware by providing links and processes, etc. This can then be expanded to include RPA work in the back end to generate IT tickets and send them to technicians for resolution instead of having a skilled resource performing these types of administrative tasks. I don't know about your experience in your government departments, but certainly my experience in my several government departments I've been at has demonstrated to me that intranets are not really all that effective and the searches are tough. A chatbot can really add a huge bit of value to the employee experience. So next, if we look at contention of resources, there's bound to be a push-pull associated with legacy maintenance development versus the introduction of new technology. Skilled employees who are the most likely to want to challenge themselves with new technology are often seen as critical resources on cornerstone applications and therefore difficult to extract in order to work on these new initiatives. We have a number of critical legacy systems at the CBSA, although I'm not there anymore. Unfortunately, as we recruit new employees, we have to make deals with them in order to work on these systems for some time before moving them off to newer technologies. The problem is that those who are quick studies become indispensable fairly quickly, which puts us in a bit of a management dilemma. I remember during my time at Public Works as a COBOL programmer on the government pension system some 22 years ago, we had a significant number of contractors, almost a 2-to-1 ratio to employees. It seemed that all the shiny new object or project work went to the contractors while employees remained on the keep the lights on maintenance work. This type of dynamic only served to have a bit of a demoralizing effect on the employees. Investing further in employees will reap huge benefits by giving them the ability to work on the cool new technology of the day versus bringing in contractors to develop the new while employees keep the lights on. While understanding that there are very good arguments to be made for going the outsourcing route, including oftentimes quicker delivery and immediate access to, and I put in quotes, expertise, because I know very well that you don't always get experts when you go out to get these contractors, as well as appropriately leveraging B-based funding against temporary resources. So if we go to the next slide, please. Fiscal considerations. Those will also come into play during times of fiscal constraint. It is critical to provide a solid return on investment or ROI for initiatives. And RPA provides a solid business case that is generally easy to define with additional organizational cultural benefits. Another aspect that's a bit of a mitigation is democratization of low-code or no-code development. That's a key element of RPA, where there are citizen developers who generally are non-IT resources who are motivated to do the work of building their own solutions. The CBSA, we decided early on that citizen developer community would be encouraged and assisted with being able to develop their own solutions. This approach reduces contention of resources, certainly on the IT side, and issues about implementing gating or validation in order to assure that certain elements are factored into solution development. So if we democratize development such that non-IT and IT are doing this RPA development work, we want to assure a certain standard for these development, for these bots. So for example, code security, code efficiency, following standards like naming conventions, complexity of the solution and or integration of various flows. These get into more complex pieces of RPA development. And in order to do this, you may want to have an RPA COE, as Irina and Melanie had spoken to earlier, where you have that governance piece or a validation layer so that the organization can feel comfortable that the appropriate guardrails, if you will, have been put into place. It's also important to consider the possibility of pairing existing and similar tasks to grow RPA skills while supporting existing work. For example, business analyst resources would be ideal candidates to become RPA analysts. The competencies of business analysis and client interaction are reusable in the RPA analyst world. The additional work required would be having an understanding of the technology sufficient enough to understand what would be a good candidate for automation. And that speaks to what Thomas brought up earlier on. You don't want to just go in there and pick processes and just go for it. You need to do the analysis to make sure that it's the right ones you're choosing. If we go to the next slide, please. So now we'll be talking about a common platform. That's an aspect of our RPA that I've raised previously in a number of different venues. It's kind of, I'm an advocate of this, very much so. If managed well, this could result in significant savings to the GC, as well as deliver additional efficiency and effectiveness aspects. A common platform has a number of different elements to it, including a common tool set, multi-departmental RFP, resource sharing, expertise sharing, bot sharing. Next slide, please. So first off, common tool set. In order to be able to maximize the effectiveness of having a broad resource base upon which to draw in order to accelerate adoption and implementation of RFP platform and initiatives, a common tool set is fundamental. A common tool set is a fairly broad term, and it can encompass such things as software or templates, or an approach to identifying, assessing, initiating, developing, deploying, maintaining, and even reporting on bots. By sharing common approaches, software, templates, organizations will be able to continually improve the products and speak a common language when getting together in a community setting to discuss RPA. The value of this can be highlighted with a few examples. When working at CBSA, we had many challenges in our cloud COE meetings, just discussing the difference between Azure and AWS clouds due to the nomenclature. These terminology differences caused confusion and or misunderstandings that made it more challenging to communicate effectively. Additionally, at the CBSA, we have a number of different case management solutions for different lines of business. This is something that's been looked at from an efficiency perspective, centralizing them down to a single solution. We should see the GC as a single organization, in my opinion, and consider consolidated solutions as an efficiency and effectiveness play. Same logic has been used to advance the need for the GC Next-Gen HR and Pay initiative that's been established by TBS to explore a future HR and Pay solution for the entire GC. Multi-departmental RFP. The benefits of a multi-departmental RFP are manifold, including reduction of duplication by each department, running separate RFP processes, a more holistic view of requirements, a more consistent availability of software tools. Each department would have access to the same tools from the vendor, and an enhanced negotiation capability due to volume purchasing. I'll talk a bit about that in a little while. A little while is coming up now. Aside from these benefits, having multiple departments leveraging the same platform fosters expertise, familiarity, and implies something of a partnership with a successful vendor. In these partnership type arrangements, organizations are often able to influence the development of desired features by being key product or sometimes termed gold partners. The value of being able to have enough leverage to influence the development of new features or capabilities cannot be underestimated. I saw that happen a lot when I was at the CBSA. I was responsible for managing a team that was doing all the software acquisitions for a major Crown project. And it was absolutely fundamental to be able to have more of a partnership arrangement than simply a transactional arrangement with various vendors. So if we move to the next slide, I'd like to discuss resource sharing, which we've already really discussed very much with respect to resource mobility. It's based on a commonality of competency and expertise and experience. I've previously had discussions that were similar in this to this concept with a TBS directory some years back, when mobile app development was really in its infancy in GC. We had discussions about TBS coordinating a community of developers who could be brought together on secondments, for example, to work on TBS priority items for various departments. Expertise sharing. Use of a common platform will allow for the sharing of expertise through communities. This has already begun with the Interdepartmental RPA Networking Group on GCPD. This community and the associated developer networking group is an excellent place for sharing experiences, lessons, successes, failures, and discussing strategic or operational concerns or ideas with a group of people who may have faced, are facing, or will face those same issues. In the absence of such communities, private sector interests, they'll develop these communities for us and invite our folks to attend. But also the problem with these is that they'll potentially provide competitive advantage or at least an unfair insight into the different types of GC initiatives that are going on. If we go to the next slide, please. Bot sharing. Another advantage of a shared platform is the ability to share developed bots. Why would every department develop a bot that does primarily the same function? For example, atypical redaction is a prime candidate for robotic process automation. If one department or agency were to develop an atypical redaction bot and share this across the GC, the savings to taxpayers would be easily quantifiable through reduced development costs. In addition, bot sharing would allow departments or agencies who have a more mature RPA platform to assist other departments or agencies in accelerating their adoption by being able to use existing bots and tweaking them for use in their organization. Further benefits of bot sharing include robustness that comes from many sets of eyes reviewing the same code base, community development and enhancement, and a growing community that can assist with troubleshooting and/or other maintenance activities. Go to the next slide, please. While I've been a long proponent of a common RPA platform, I do understand there are associated strategic or political considerations that come with the GC-wide procurement, particularly, and solution. Having managed a team responsible, as I mentioned before, for enterprise software acquisitions, I've become quite familiar with many of the aspects of procurement, and I don't take lightly issues of perception, fairness, transparency, or competitive advantage. But on a purely editorial note, I also don't take lightly our responsibility to be able to save taxpayer dollars in everything we do. So in the absence, a little bit of a CBSA experience, in the absence of a larger GC strategy brought about by a multi-departmental RFP or TBS coordination for that matter, the CBSA has experimented with all the products in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. And so while gaining a lot of information and knowledge about these tools, there's also a little bit of spinning, if you will. The CBSA has also become an active participant in the Interdepartmental RPA Networking Group, and it has absolutely been invaluable. It helps to share the information. We can share tools. We're able to help frame our approaches and strategies by bouncing ideas off one another. Overall, I feel RPA provides a platform that can deliver significant benefits to an organization while permitting opportunities for employees and the ability to set up a reproducible platform that can enhance time to market and quality of solution. I'd like to thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you very much, Ranjan. That was absolutely fascinating. I would absolutely love to hear more about democratizing development, for example, and definitely about unifying and common platform, lofty things to aspire to. Quick reminder that if you would like to ask questions, you may use the participate button in the top right corner of your screen. Please send your question along with your email address, and in the discussion portion, we will be addressing some of those burning questions. Moving on to our next presenter, Steve Adamson from Export Development Canada. Steve, go ahead. Steve, are you perhaps on mute?
Thank you. As a matter of fact, I am. Thank you. Okay, so as you can see from the slide here, the name of my presentation is, so you finished your POC, now what? Just go to the next slide, please. So that's me. I am the Director of Analytics and Automation Business Support at Export Development Canada. Our mission is to help all Canadian companies grow and succeed internationally. Next slide, please. So basically, we are a financial institution. We help companies who are thinking of exporting, but we also sell insurance. We don't interact with Canadians, individuals. We deal with Canadian companies. So we sell insurance, and we give loans to foreign companies to buy Canadian products, and we make money on doing that. So just to give you a sense as to what our business model is, it's a little unusual. Next, please. And we're a Crown corporation, so we're owned by the government, but we're not government employees. Next, please. Okay, so we were early out of the gate. Sorry, back up one. We did our POC back 2017, early 2018. We have, well, depends on the week. We have 34 bots in production now. Sorry, 34 robotic processes sitting on 81 bots. This may come shock to some of you who are new into the game, but we've already retired several bots. So that's where we're at now. In fact, I don't know how many we've retired. In fact, some of them only lasted 6 months, and we did that on purpose. We have an in-house RPA team, 1 citizen developer and 3 devs as part of my team. I have another part that deals with analytics. And we've never used consulting help so far. That could change at some point in the future. You can do it on your own. The one thing I would say, though, is that if you do want to do it on your own, you're not going to get huge benefits, I think, if you do it on your own, just because you're going a bit slower. So there is an advantage to using consulting support, I think. Having not done it, I'm just assuming that. Our priorities at this point, we talked about, Thomas talked about it, and I think just about everybody talked about it, prioritizing your backlog. And for us, in fact, I just wrote this slide the other day, and the priorities are actually, there's 4 priorities. The top one is actually not risk reduction. The top priority for EDC as of February was anything COVID related. That jumped to the top of the priority list. We're now pretty much through building all of our COVID related bots. We managed one government program called Business Credit Availability Program with a business development bank. So that was our highest priority, followed by risk reduction, capacity gains, and enabling innovation. So I think most departments are viewing RPA as a way of improving capacity. That's actually our 3rd priority. It's not our highest priority. Next slide. So because we were pretty early in the gate, we've been at this for quite a while. We've been in production for a few years now. And one of the things I wanted to share with people, and the topic of the conversation is, now you've done your POC, now what? I learned a lot of things in the first year and a half afterwards, and I wanted to share some of these with you so you don't end up with some of the scars that I have, or some of the missed opportunities, let's put it that way, of getting things, because certain things I tripped over and that. So anyway, you can see them here. Renewal of your software license upgrades. You can see it there. Connect with your clients. Develop a business continuity plan, and that. So you want to go to the next slide. We're currently using UiPath. Very happy with it. Now I'm assuming the other ones are like it. It's a software as a service. So even if it's on-prem, you're paying an annual license. So so it's renewed annually. And one of the challenges I ran into was the first renewal takes longer than you think. We have our own legal department. I don't know if other government departments have that or not, but it took far longer to get through our legal department the first time. It took a few months. The second time took a couple emails, I think. And so one of the challenges there is, like for us, we're using attended bots and unattended bots. Of the 81 bots we had, one is unattended. We're going to go up to 2 in the near future. But 80 of our bots are attended bots. This is where the human actually has to press a button to launch the activity. So one of the things we had to do is try to forecast the growth in licenses, which is not entirely easy. And we had to do a lot of estimating in that. And you also have to work with your vendor and make sure that you understand what their price increases are going to be. And one of the errors I made was, although I came in very much at the ground floor, I was not there when they initially bought it. And so when I went to renew it, I was advised that, well, Steve, did you ask for more? Because we basically saw probably almost 100% growth in the number of bots we needed. And I was reminded that, well, I hadn't asked for more funding in the funding cycle before, so I was going to have to live with what I had. Thankfully, some little angel was looking out for me, and we had initially bought named licenses, and we were able to change them over to concurrent licenses, and we were able to get a lot more users on the same number of licenses with just a moderate amount of growth. So my key suggestion is make sure you get that funding. If you think you're going to have more bots in the future, and I'm pretty sure you will with our experience, that you get that funding request in earlier than later. Next slide. The next thing you have to do too is your software vendor probably has one or more updates to the software every year. Sometimes they're called long-term support versions versus short-term support versions. Short terms are maybe supported for a year, long terms for 2 years. So depending on how your organization is able to do upgrades, if they're very slow, then you probably want to stick with long-term ones. But for us, the vendor had told us that it was going to be 3 hours. The upgrade was going to be 3 hours per environment. So we have a dev, UAT, and a production environment. So that should have been 9 hours. They were, for the most part, they were pretty bang on their timing. One thing we missed was there's a whole bunch of things that are specific to us with backing up things. It took a bit longer than that. But the thing is, the project world, they were thinking we needed to have a full project with project managers and that. So that took me months and months to get through the project maze at EDC. The second upgrade, IT came to us and it took one meeting and we were on our way. So do not underestimate the level of effort to get that first upgrade done. IT is, once they've got sort of one under the belt, like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. At the same time, though, there are some gotchas in the upgrades because invariably they'll change something that makes it just slightly different. So, and figure out your funding in that. Next slide, please. Next thing is probably partners. If we could have that next slide, that'd be great. Okay, talk about partners. Oh, sorry. Okay, let's go to partners. I'll talk to business continuity plan later. Business continuity plan, that one there. Invariably, there are going to be days, possibly several days, when the bots don't show up. So you really need to be able to have something in place. And we were audited by our internal audit at our request back in February, and they reminded us that we need to have some more in place around that. So make sure you have a RACI and that, and making sure that that it's reviewed on a frequent basis. So the other thing too is engaging in partners. One of the biggest challenges is making sure that none of your enterprise applications get a bot that does something wrong and corrupts one of your enterprise apps. That would be a good way for Steve to get fired, and Steve doesn't want that. So for the sake of Steve, it's all about me. I'm okay with that. You need to work with those teams that support those enterprise apps. Make sure that you have some sort of RACI and process with them sorted out. Our first one took us months to get the first bot through, and that's because it wasn't entirely clear to everybody. We knew what we were doing because we put several bots in place. I mean, we learned a lot from that. So getting something in place, there's something in the Interdepartmental RPA Network page. I did a workshop on that a few months ago. Next, please. The next group would probably be your communities of practice. The people who were most interested in bots, interestingly, were all the people in IT were saying, hey, what's this new technology? A lot of people in IT do not want to become archaic. They want to make sure they're keeping ahead and staying in lined up with the latest technologies. So they were very interested. So we reached out to your solution architects and the various groups there. The solution architects are some of the most important because you want them to understand what bots do and what they're capable of, because when they're going to determine what solution should be in place, they can't forget that an RPA might be a suitable piece for gluing something together. It might be something that allows a process or a solution to go ahead when otherwise it may not be feasible. And interestingly enough, some of these same people, when they're on projects, they're now directing suggestions to us for things to get done. So that's worked out well too. Next slide, please. The next group of people are very much on the risk side of things. As I said, we reached out to internal audit, asked them to audit us. Recommend you wouldn't do this for, I'd want to get at least a year under your belt of being in operations so you have something for them to look at. Ideally, you want to, if there's problems, and they're going to identify problems, they found all sorts of problems with us. I don't think it was necessarily ground shattering. I'm still here. My view was that I'd rather get a sort of slap on the wrist for some problems with 25 bots than get fired for having a problem with 500 bots. So next slide, please. And a couple other players in there too. We have an operational risk team. We met with them, let them know what the bots were all about, sort of align the prioritization. We'll go back one, please. There's a governance team in one of the work areas. They were actually quite helpful to us because they wanted to see what our governance was. So they actually helped us define some of our governance. And, privacy. They were very interested in making sure that any of the data that's moving around with the bots was covered. And so what they did was they actually sat in on our interviews with some of our client groups initially, just so they could get some comfort that what these things were doing. So now you can go ahead. The other thing too is making sure that you reach out to your client base and do a roadshow with them to lines of business. And don't forget that IT is a line of business in itself. In fact, they've got lots and lots of processes that could just be automated, free up some time there, especially like on onboarding of employees and stuff like that. Next slide, please. And, okay. Can the slide person, can they hear what I'm saying? Sorry. Okay, I think I'm just about time there. Ran generally 1 minute. There's a couple other slides there that, the one thing I do want to talk to, one of our bots, when we started doing work with trying to get a bot that would be able to write into a enterprise app, we had one of our clients, a guy I've worked with for almost 20 years, an underwriter, so I won't hold it against him, but he was very unhappy that it took us two months to get one of the first bots in place. So at ADC, we've been following lean practices for probably over a decade now. So so he gives a lot of feedback that he wasn't happy with 2 months to get a bot out the door. So to solve that, we fell back on our usual practices of doing problem-solving sessions. So within the COE, we do a problem-solving session every 2 to 3 weeks to look at any of the issues, to see how we can improve the process to have bots improve the process. And we meet with them every couple of weeks, sort out some of the problems, and then, if needed, we meet with the teams that support the enterprise applications, and we solve problems with them. So the nice thing is that we had a bot, one of our first bots that took 2 months to get into production. We had a similar size one just recently that only took 3.5 weeks. Given the amount of testing that's needed when you're writing into an enterprise app, and then there are test artifacts that are needed and all that kind of stuff. I heard someone say earlier, getting a bot done in a day or a week, though that's fine if all it's doing is dealing with Excel and your Office suite. But if it's writing into one of your enterprise applications, you better be taking more than a week. You can test this thing and build. So anyway, and not only that, but internal audit, there were some observations that they made about the, testing artifacts. How do we know that you tested that, Steve, and that? So I think there's a couple more slides there, but I think they're going to be shared afterwards, and so I think that's enough for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Steve. That was great. It was fascinating. And today I learned that EDC sells insurance, and I'm going to file that away for the next time EDC comes up as a category in Jeopardy. That is for sure. So our final presentation comes to us from Sylvain No from the Department of Canadian Heritage. Sylvain, à toi la parole.
You have the floor, Sylvain. You have the floor, Sylvain.
We can hear you. Now we can't hear you. Sylvain, go ahead.
So I'm so sorry. I'll start again. So my name is Sylvain No, and I'm the service desk on-site team leader and the service desk innovation team leader at Canadian Heritage. So today I'm here to talk about a bot that we created a couple years back for our services. So I'll explain how our bot changed the way we provide IT support to our department. And I will also show you how we were able to reduce customer wait time while increasing the number of requests we can make per week. And that's with reduced staff. So Jarvis. For the one who are familiar with the Avengers, Jarvis is a fictional artificial intelligence system that appears in the Marvel universe, more precisely in Iron Man. So we decided to name the project after that name. Some names and function of the project are based on that theme. So if you see that, it's normal. So the project started 5 years ago when, a little bit after SSC has been created. Since the system of SSC and our system does not communicate directly, a lot of redundant tasks had to be done by a human, which greatly increased the wait time for the customer. And we had also a lot of email to proceed. So it was not interesting, it was redundant, and we had a lot of data entry to do. So one of our employees decided on his own personal time to create a bot. It was a simple point and click, but it was working. We used that point and click for almost 2 years before we got the money from our deputy minister to have a dedicated team working on Jarvis. So next slide, please. So we had, 4 main things that we wanted to accomplish. The first one, to stimulate the innovation. With that, we did something big here at PCH. Now we have a couple of groups that are in line to have to get a part of Jarvis in their group. Now we have HR, SAP, the service desk of SAP that is part of our, of Jarvis. The Jarvis is working for them. The other thing, increase client satisfaction. Well, with that, people, they expect just-in-time service, support, and continuous feedback. For the people who work in IT, we all know that. So we had to find a way to reduce the wait time. So before Jarvis, it was up to 5 days, working days, to receive a laptop for new users. Now with Jarvis, we're at 4 days, and we could go at 3 days, but it's coming. So we were able to greatly reduce the time to get a new laptop. well, the third point is close to the increased client satisfaction. One of the things, several tasks performed by our IT technician are repetitive and redundant. Now with the bot, we don't have to do anything like that. The data entry, we don't do any data entry, and we can focus on important stuff. Work better, work smarter. So we were able to reduce our reduce the time to fix a problem, reduce the stress, reduce the error, and les oublis. And also we were able to eliminate the workaround and have more long-term solution. So at the end, our employee, our technician are better. They have more time to work on themselves. Like they have time to go learn new skills, and everyone is more motivated. Go on the other slide, please. So the vision of this project was, So Jarvis, we have the main brain. Jarvis is like a dispatcher, and you have a series of bots. We call them the marks. So each marks has a dedicated thing to do. Like we have a bot, a mark dedicated to, let's say, create the phone swap at SSC. Let's say that. So if an employee over here asks for a phone swap, Jarvis will assign the phone swap to the Mark. Mark will do the job, send the report to Jarvis, and Jarvis will let us know if there's any error or if it was successful. So usually it's successful, but if there's an error, well, we're able to do something and fix it. Next slide, please. So to this date, Jarvis is responsible for creating accounts when a new employee joins the department, as well as deleting accounts when an employee leaves the department. That said, the team is working on adding various modules to the list of tasks that Jarvis will automate. It still requires a little bit of help from a technician, like for a delete user or a new user. We want to make sure it's not a dummy user or there's no major error. So Jarvis still needs sometimes the help from someone, but other than that is independent and autonomous. So email account creation, account deletion, GC Wi-Fi request, well, we don't need that anymore. SSC is doing that now, but or like creating email from the DM to a new employee. So when we have a new employees here, Jarvis will send an email, a greeting email to the employee 1 week after his starting date. So next slide, please. I'll show you the 4 main modules that we use for Jarvis. So the first one is the new users. Creating a new users by hand for a technician, it's around 45 minutes. Oh, can you switch slide? Yeah, exactly. Okay, it's hard to see, but yeah, we have a new. Oh, come back. So the new users, yeah, it's 45 minutes for new users. Right now, it's only a minute just to validate all the information, like. We can see over here, new user comparison. So in blue on the left, it was all done by a human, by a technician. On the right, it's after Jarvis there. So everything that is in orange is done by Jarvis. The only thing that is still in blue down there is the security. We need to validate with the security if the user can have a laptop. And the other blue thing is we need to give the laptop to the employee. So that's the only thing we do now. So it's 35 to 45 minutes saved per new user. So let's say last year we created 800 new users. So we were able to save over 2 months of working time for a technician. We also have the delete users. well, it's also the same thing. If you can come back just one slide, we also have the information synchronization. That's something really interesting that we created. I'm not sure if you all have the same problems, but all the information about yourself is different on GEDS, on the Active Directory, intranet, Outlook, SDP. So with the information sync, the employee just need to fill out a little form. Jarvis will go get all the information and update all your information on all the platform. So you only have one place to go to have all your information up to date everywhere. Like right now, we're working hard on the migration of Office 365. With the information sync, we're able to. We forced everyone to do it here at Canadian Heritage, so it will be easier for the migration. Yeah, email listener. Like you can see, I'm not sure if you can see it. Last year, Jarvis were able to treat it almost 10,000 emails. So it's 10,000, let's say it's 2 to 5 minutes per email. That's a lot of time saved for us. We also implemented the Jarvis to the service desk of SAP over here. And we were able to proceed almost 22,000 email over there. So that's a lot of data entry that we don't have to do anymore. It's really, really interesting. And the last module, the special requests. Well, we're getting special requests sometimes from, well, different partner over here. Like something funny, we had the deputy minister creating a contest. We had to take a selfie of ourselves, and everyone had to vote for it. So we created a little system so people can vote for it, and with all the photo. So we have different kind of thing we can do with that. And at the end, as you can see on the right, a minimum of almost 1,200 hours of or 31 weeks of continuous work is saved per year. So with that, you can put your employee on different project or something more fun to do. Next slide, please. And next again. So the brain of the operation. The thing about Jarvis, what is fun, it's open source. So we distribute it on the GC code side to have Jarvis shared with all the departments. Like someone said earlier, it's something really interesting, and we can help each other grow with that and have a better bot. So it's something that we share. I know whether Canada is currently using our code and is in process of implementing it. One of our employees went over there to help them do that, but with the COVID, I think it's on the ice right now, but we'll continue later for sure. So next slide. So yeah, Future Jarvis. So chatbot, we're working to have a chatbot. That would be great. AHR, something we already started working on, and one day artificial intelligence. That would be great, but that's something for the future. So don't hesitate if you have any question or you want to implement it in your IT services. I'll be there to help you do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvain. I had way too many Tony Stark lines in my head, and I just can't pick one. So I'm just going to wrap that up. And thank you, all panelists, once again, for your fantastic presentations. Maybe I'll save the Tony Stark questions for the open discussion, which is just about to start. We have plenty of time to answer your burning questions about robotic process automation. So Melanie is going to moderate this conversation for us. Melanie, over to you.
Thanks so much. Before I get started, I just was going to ask Sylvain if Jarvis had a brother that we could adopt at Transport, but you just answered that for me, so that's perfect. I'll probably be in touch. I can see so many solutions from that. So I have been scrolling through the questions that everybody's been sending us. Fantastic questions, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. Irina, this one is for you. There seems to be some interest in the RPA Interdepartmental Networking Group. And the question is, do you know if anyone can attend the Interdepartmental RPA Group meetings?
Yes, so that's an excellent question. And first of all, I don't want to take all the credits. It's kind of self-managed right now. We have a fairly large group, and we take turns who organize and plan next events. So Ranjan ran a few. I did a couple as well. So we have, I think, more than 50 definitely around 100 members of this group and more than 40 departments. So a trick for me now to organize to do a roundtable, because every time we do roundtable, our hour and a half of meeting is gone because everybody have a news to share or question to ask. So as a matter of fact, our next meeting is this Thursday. We do have government crown corporation. I must say we don't have vendors. We can probably, if group agrees, we can maybe bring somebody for a demo, but it's actually us, our kind of safe circle. So this is for government and crown corporations. And this week we have interesting agenda. We're going to be talking about Ranjan, remind me, is Treasury Board going to be talking about I forgot the
algorithmic impact assessment.
Algorithmic impact assessment. Because I was nervous. And we will be talking, actually Transport Canada will be doing the demo of the work we're doing with security screening program, and specifically talking about IBPMS, Intelligent Business Process Mapping, which we found was a great component addition, like a missing puzzle of RPA. So that's for this Thursday, and we roughly meet every month. All this to say, send me email. I'll add you to the list if you're not a vendor. If you're a vendor, still send me email. We'll talk. Okay.
Thanks, Irina. There is also an RPA Interdepartmental Networking Group wiki page on GCpedia, and you can sign up there as well. So maybe we'll save Irina's inbox just a little bit, but you can email her too. She's super nice. Okay, so the next question, Thomas, I'm going to direct your way. Ranjan spoke a lot about this, but I think that you have something to add based off of our Interdepartmental Networking Group. So the question reads, how do you think we could have an enterprise-wide kind of database where we can share the RPA processes that are very similar?
Sure. So I think there's a couple ways of doing this. We do certainly add the projects that each department is undertaking in the RPA space to our interdepartmental wiki and have regular updates through our monthly or bi-monthly meetings. We've also set up what's called a digital exchange platform, and this is specific to Blue Prism technology software, but I'm sure there's something that exists for the other types of RPA softwares. But basically, it's a space created just for the Government of Canada for us to post our automation. So the departments that are using Blue Prism, they can post any of their automations there, and they can be downloaded, extracted from there, and imported into your local environments. So if, for example, a department wanted to copy our customer invoice and statement process that we built for COVID-19, we could share that on there, and it could be consumed by another department that uses SAP, for example.
Perfect. Thanks, Thomas.
Yep.
Okay, I have another great question here. Ranjan, I'm going to send this one your way. So it says that this sounds like a great field to get into, and this is RPA. So is there a specific program you can recommend, or let us know if there's an area that has the biggest need for resources so we can upskill quickly in this field?
Yeah, so First off, yes. I'm going to be biased, but I do believe it is a great area. I think it's going to explode in the government of Canada. It has taken off quite well, but it's going to go much further as the skills become more readily available and as we're able to demonstrate increasing value to the organizations. So I haven't found a single educational institution that provides programs specifically around RPA training. I'm on 3 program advisory committees at Algonquin College, and I keep pushing them to include RPA. They are looking at an AI grad cert, though, so that's certainly something that would be of interest. But otherwise, I think every vendor, and I can speak specifically and more so to UiPath, because that's the technology we are using right now. But there's a ton of freely available training. My one word of advice would be, don't go into it because you feel like it'll get you a job. You won't enjoy your job. You really need to have a passion. You need to have motivation to learn, continue to learn, to love to do it. If you can do this in your own time as well, or on the side of your desk, you'll probably get a lot further than feeling like maybe this is an area that I can leverage to get a job. Nowadays, particularly on the technology side, there's far too much change, and you have to keep up far too often. So you have to demonstrate a passion around the technology. But certainly there's a ton of free training out there. Virtually every Magic Quadrant product has community editions so that anybody could download a copy and they could start testing them out on their own and building their own automations with their own productivity suites at home or any other applications that they have.
Awesome. Thanks, Ranjan. Sylvain, did you have something you wanted to add? I just saw your hand go up. Okay, good. Okay. Just want to make sure anybody can add. Steve wants to add something, and the next question's coming your way too, Steve.
Okay. So I think one of the things too is I hired a developer a year ago or so, and the market, there are not many RPA developers right now. So if this is something that interests you and you want to get up and running, takes about 2 weeks. Of online courses and then some follow-up courses, but you can be operational in 2 weeks. Highly recommend it. I'm sure that another thing too is the consulting companies in town, they are looking for people. So if you have the ability to program and you are looking for a job, 2 weeks from now, you are marketable. And and the one thing, sort of joking yet somewhat serious in the interdepartmental meetings, leave my staff alone. Unfortunately, you guys know where they are, but I've got them. I'm keeping them.
Thanks, Steve. It's a great addition for sure. Okay, so we have received a few questions around errors within the bot, and more specifically in this question, when implementing an RPA solution, what options or methods do you and your teams employ to manage edge or corner cases?
So I come back to, how long does it take to put a bot in place? And quite frankly, as I said, if you're just having something that's moving data between a spreadsheet and Outlook and something like that, you're not too concerning. But if your bot is going to be writing into one of your enterprise applications, you absolutely have to take all those potential errors into account. And so the RACI I mentioned earlier in process, well, when we're trying to write into the systems, one of the things we have to do is we actually have to present what the bot does to the QA team for that system and the support team for that system and show them what our bot is going to do to their system. And they'll come back and say, well, what about this scenario, this scenario, this scenario, and give us suggestions on how that should play that. I mean, ideally, we try to cover those before because we know the questions are going to come. Assume that it's going to crash out. Assume it's this. Assume it's this. There's numerous things you have to assume. So So when I hear someone say, yes, I'm just going to take a business analyst and I'm going to throw them in here, they've had experience for a student with a month of doing macros and that. Yeah, but the problem is it's more than just doing the coding. It's knowing when to put the error handling in place, because I do not, I've told my team, I'm not getting fired because we've gone and messed up one of the systems, or we've got something that's, especially an unattended bot, that could just start grinding away on something and completely blowing out one of your systems. That would be bad. So you got to do your absolute best to make sure it doesn't do that. And that's why when I hear it takes a day or a week to put one in place, yeah, you can code it in a few days, absolutely. But that's why it takes us 3.5 weeks to get one in place, because we have to do a whole bunch of testing. We have to have test artifacts put in place. I mean, the SDLC, you're doing that. Yes, citizen developers can do this, but oh my God, you do not want a citizen developer who's been on the job for a week writing something that's going to be writing into one of your systems. That's all part of the governance that audit is going to tell you about, what you should know about long before then. They shouldn't have to tell you that one. Here's Irina, got her hand up.
And Thomas too, absolutely. That's a great point. It does come to governance. Thomas, we'll go over to you and then we'll go to Irina on this. It's a great question and an important one.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different aspects to this question. Like I'll relate it back to process discovery as well. Like there are different cases that have more pathways or branches to them. And oftentimes in a proof of concept, I think we fell victim to this to a certain degree is looking at the happy path only for our proof of concept. I would really recommend going deeper than that on a process discovery and eventually a proof of concept, because you can't stick a happy path process in production. Like Steve said, you have to basically build for all these different possible scenarios. There are ways you can perhaps automate a portion of the process and reduce the scope, but that has to be done carefully and intelligently. And the only way you're going to do that is knowing your process inside and out well before you decide to automate it.
Irina, over to you.
Yes, Thomas pretty much took my answer. I just want to reiterate this, and I agree 100%. When you deal with exceptions, exactly, you can't just, when you do proof of concept, you just do happy paste and it all look great. But when you actually start looking at all corner cases, in many cases, we walked away saying, you know what, it's not a great candidate for RPA. Give you a good example. When we started working with travel claims, we found so many corner cases and exceptions. So we were like, okay, we're going to build a bot to automate a portion, like a bot to parse taxi cheats, something like this. But the whole process, there's so many exceptions. It's just not gonna, it's just not the right fit. And also I want to talk very quickly, we talk about DLC. So even though it's RPA, it's a still software development. So we're following the SDLC process. It's fast, but you still follow it. And I personally am a huge fan of a citizen development, but I will let my citizen development to put bot into production. That's what's the job of our RPA Center of Excellence. The citizen development can build the bot, but it's ultimately a COE responsibility to validate the code, to manage the testing process, deploy it into production, and if something doesn't work, guess who's going to be getting the call and saying that, somebody can process the invoices.
Thanks, Irina. So we have another question that came in on change management, and it said that we touched on it in our presentation, but the question specifically asks if there was any pushback from some employees. Now, I can touch on this from the TC experience, and then I'll open it up to you guys if you'd like to also weigh in on your experiences. But at Transport Canada, we were very open, and we spoke to our employees often and regularly, and one of the main and key messages that we were driving home in all of these presentations and communications was that we are not looking to eliminate jobs. At TC, we are still not looking to eliminate jobs. We want to take those boring aspects of your job and give it to a bot so you can do something a little bit more fun, a little bit more interesting. And it was very well received at Transport. I remember the first presentation that we did, I was so nervous. I didn't know how TC employees were going to take it. And the first question was, when can you bring it to accounts receivable? When can you bring it to my area? And so that was a little bit reassuring, and I said a big sigh of relief in that presentation. And that's the approach that we've taken at TC. Does anybody want to weigh in on that? You can put your, okay, go ahead, Steve, and then we'll go to Ranjan.
Yeah, the same with us. And I was only one team that I was a little worried about. Luckily for us, because we've been doing lean processing for about a decade, we have very much a problem-solving culture and making things better and eliminating waste. So I think one of the things I did was I basically went into a team saying, okay, are you doing all the things you're supposed to be doing? Are there things you're not getting done because your backlog is so bad? And the one team I was worried about was our accounts payable team. And I had a gift given to me a week beforehand on our intranet. A sign went up saying accounts payable is so swamped that it's going to take an extra week to process all the claims, or are there 2 weeks? So I went in there and basically pulled up their advertisement on the intranet and said, I hear you're behind. Can I help you? And they were all over us. They're sort of, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do that? So I think for a lot of people, it's going to allow them to do those things that they know they're supposed to be doing but can't get to. And I think we can talk to innovation as well, because there are things that we should be doing that we're not. And the bots, like we just put a bot into place. It's called the DOA checklist. DOA is, delegation of authority. And there were certain checks they weren't necessarily doing because we just didn't have time to do it on the underwriting space. So now you can do all sorts of tasks and processes you couldn't do before, because now you can. Because now, and even in internal audit, we were at one conference and they were saying that internal audit used to do random sampling. Well, now they can do 100% sampling because they can, or the bot can. That's
Thanks,
it for me.
Steve. Ranjan, over to you.
Yeah, so I had that exact experience. I was speaking to one of the directors in HR, talking about RPA and what we could do for them in that space. And the very first question was exactly that. Does this mean we're downsizing? Do I have to get rid of employees? And it's actually not, as you said, Mal, it's not that at all. We're not trying to get rid of anybody. We're trying to get rid of those mundane tasks that are really, prone to human error. Get rid of those and allow them to put in the value-added work that they can't otherwise put in. So, for an example, in the HR area, it took them so long to develop reports that the analyst was never able to actually do the analysis. So reports going up to our vice president were going up with data, but no analysis. It wasn't real information, it was just data. So being able to automate that allows the analyst to actually do the analysis on that data, provide recommendations, or at least further insight into what the data means. So you don't have a VP getting a spreadsheet trying to figure out what it means at the executive table so they can relay that information.
That's a good point. Thanks, Ranjan. We have received a few questions surrounding security and user IDs for the bots. I feel like I was muted. I hope that was accidentally. I hope I didn't say anything wrong. I saw a few people put their hands up there as I was panicking to unmute myself. Can you guys raise your hands again? Sorry. All right, Steve, we'll start with you. I'm also interested to know if Jarvis is the user ID that's going on as well. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so for security, I think we did a workshop on that a couple of months ago, as well as the RACI process. And what we have is we worked with our IT security team, and we worked and developed a self-assessment. So basically, we would self-assess every project we look at. We have a self-assessment document. We go through the various things, score it, and under certain circumstances, depending on what it looks like, we can just proceed without involving them. Sorry, we have to send them the assessment, so they have an artifact for each one. But certain ones, it'll basically say, okay, we need to under certain scenarios, then we have to talk to them. We do a walkthrough with them saying what the process is, and they would say okay and give us guidance on how we proceed. So that's how we do it. Oh, sorry, and that checklist is on the interdepartmental web page, the GCpedia page there.
Perfect. Thanks, Steve. Over to you, Thomas.
Yeah, we do it a little bit differently at Global Affairs. We're working towards getting an enterprise authority to operate that includes a number of use cases. I guess that part is a little bit similar to you, Steve, in the sense that you're pre-approved for a certain selection of use cases. But we also have to work with our system owners and get sign off from business process owners as well. So depending on what systems we're touching, if we're doing something with HRMS and SAP, we have to involve those two groups and understand what we need to have the bot do and tailor a role specific to that task. And we would have that, that bot access set up for each of those accounts. So the bot would have its own system user account, just like a person would. And the business process owner would basically sign off on the robot's credentials and the role that's attributed to it. And that would be, sufficient for our system owners, like the SAP team or the HRMS team.
Yeah, we have a very similar structure at TC. Irina's saying, yeah. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I think one of the other concerns you have.
Oh, you're on mute, Steve.
Yeah.
Okay, back again. There's, I think, car insurance in BC is provincially run or something like that. And I was talking to someone there one time, and they were saying that they actually can process a claim from receipt to payment, all done automatically. And so for your segregation of duty, as long as your bots sort of account for that. But one of the other things you have to be careful of too is, remember, it's the programmers who are programming the bot. You have to make sure that they don't get on both sides of the segregation of duties, and making sure you're keeping them only having access into your dev or test environment and not having access into production and that. So that is one other concern too, is just the access your developers have.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge working with some of the application owners as well. Dealing with segregation of duties, you could open a whole other can of worms there. But I think explaining how the bot architecture is set up so that you have kind of separate compartmentalized boxes, and how you're building that segregation of duty is important to explain to both the business owner and the application owner, so that that they're confident that you are having the proper roles and they're separated sufficiently.
Okay, thanks everyone. Am I on mute? No, I'm good. Okay.
Yes, you're muted. I can't hear you.
You know what? I keep getting told that someone is muting me in the group. I have to find out who my friends are here. Okay, as I was trying to say, I think that is an essential question on how we segregate everything, and it's a super important one. So I'm super happy that we received one from our participants. I did see a question come through that I wanted to touch on myself. The question was RPA knowledge transfer sessions. What is this? So I think that came from our presentation, but I think everyone on this panel could speak to it. But specifically at TC, what we did with our consultants and our partner is we really wanted to ensure that we built internal capabilities. So when we had the partner come in and show us everything that we didn't know, we also asked for specifically in our contracting vehicle to build in knowledge transfer sessions. So they would have knowledge sessions with the employees and train them on anything that you asked for, but from the basics to very detailed. And then from there, we even had at the end of a solution development, this is now how you will maintain that going forward. So that's what we did at TC. Does anyone want to add anything to that? Go ahead, Irina, and then we'll go over to Steve.
I just want to add from my side, also it's very important you actually make sure your development team has time for those knowledge training sessions. It is not something can be done just on the side of your desk. So I remember when we just started working with a vendor, and at some point I brought the question saying, hey, we don't have enough knowledge training sessions done. And they were like, in order to do knowledge transfer, you actually have to have somebody identifying for those knowledge transfer sessions. So make sure you do identify people and make sure they have time. It's part of their responsibility, whether it's a net new hire or it's somebody who you allocate for this work, but you make sure you have people with dedicated time for job shadowing, for a knowledge transfer session. We actually have the similar approach with a project we're doing with artificial intelligence, machine learning, because it's a new area. We have actually people on assignment with vendor for 2-3 months to actually learn and get the knowledge.
Okay. Thanks, Irina. And we'll go over to you, Steve, very shortly, and then we're going to wrap it up, I'm told. And you're on mute.
Jeez, I'm 5 for 5 there, I think.
Need a bot for that, Steve?
Yeah, with facial recognition. So the one thing to throw a bit of a monkey wrench into that, though, is like for us, we never had any knowledge transfer sessions because we didn't have any consultants. But the thing is, for us, we're up to now 34 processes. We're well on our way to keep pounding out even more by the end of the year. So the big thing is, what happens when you get 300 bots and your original programmers, let's say you're in-house, they've retired, they've moved on to another job. How do you make sure that you can maintain those bots when the person who built them is no longer here? And so are you going to do a knowledge transfer for every bot you've got? Well, that's fine when you have 5, 10, even 34. We can do that sort of. But once you get 100, 200, how do you do it then? So I think one of the things we have to really bear in mind is at some point, these things are going to be around. Like, I mean, we've been at it for a couple of years now, and we're already getting the position where, okay, the first one's, the person who built the first one's gone, or they're doing something else. So how do you scale up for bots that were built 20 years ago? At some point in 2040, there's going to be bots built 20 years ago by someone who's long gone. How do you do that? So again, bear in mind, we're in here for the long haul. We're at the beginning. And make sure that we set it up for our successors to be successful.
Great closing statement, Steve. Thanks for that. All right, back over to CSPS.
I know lots and lots of vowels in there. If anybody needs vowels, I give them away for free.
Thank you.
Thank you once again, Thomas, Irina, Melanie, Ranjan, Steve, and Sylvain for this wonderful and open discussion. You heard it here first, folks. For the virtual event bingo card, the middle square is mute. So thank you once again for this wonderful session today. A couple of things that I heard in the last half an hour or so. The public service needs people to work on RPA. That's very clear. However, there is no poaching. If you're interested, and I'm hoping that there's quite a few hundreds of you still online with us right now, get trained up. Be passionate about what you do. We need people like that. And also, sharing is caring. Share best practices, lessons learned, challenges, and code. There's definite interest, and the future looks bright. Thank you once again, all of you, for your participation today. Trevor is going to show you a couple of kiosks that we have set up for you. You would have received the link for them for the kiosks page with your package, and we will send it again in the reminder. On behalf of the school, I would like to thank all the panelists and presenters for participating today. I would also like to thank all virtual participants for attending and contributing to today's event. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Your feedback is also very important to us, so I invite you to complete the electronic evaluation that you will receive in the coming days. This enables us to tailor events to your needs. The school definitely has more events to offer you, and I encourage you to visit our website to keep up to date and register to all future learning opportunities. Merci encore à toutes et à...
Thank you again to everyone, and we wish you a wonderful week. See you next time.